Have you read today's or yesterday's news? Fall of Kabul. What might happen to the monuments over there? Today, we will see one monument which is in Afghanistan, which hopefully will remain because it has remained so for 1000 years without any turbulence. If you are not able to hear me, please come forward. That is the minaret of Jam, which is also UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is a twin tower of Qutb Minar in India. There is a poet called Faiz Ahmad Faiz, and he wrote one dua. Dua मतलब प्रार्थना कि आइए हाथ उठाए हम जिन्हें etc. तो in the end he says जिनका दी पैरवी किस बोरिया है उनको हिम्मत कुफ्र मिले जुर्रत तहकीक मिले जिनका सर मुंतजिर तेगे जफा है उनको दस्ते कातिल को झटक देने की तौफीक मिले हरफ हक दिल में खटकता है जो कांटे की तरह आज इजहार करे और खलिश मिट जाए तपिश मिट जाए जो भी है तो hopefully we have seen many videos and photos over last couple of days of the fall of Kabul. You're not feeling sad anyway. Let us start with the today's lecture. So far we have covered previous year questions mains ke, and then we have been through the philosophical part or analytical aspect of concept of heritage, UNESCO, conventions, debates of authenticity, etc. And then we started dividing and categorizing Indian monuments into various types, thematically, era-wise, region-wise, chronology of inscriptions, etc. And then we started treating them one by one. Mains wala part ke you have got some idea of how to write an answer, what kind of philosophical orientation to the mains answer will be appreciated a lot, along with the facts that we're discussing with every site. Okay? Now we are going one by one. Two sites we have already discussed. I will also give you 100 questions ka test, MCQ test, which will be specifically for UNESCO sites only. Out of 47 or 8 are gone, so 32 sites we have, of which 6-7 are in modern. So remaining sites का मैं एक पूरा MCQ test बनाऊंगा. Each site 4, 5, 6 MCQs on an average. 100 MCQ का test only for UNESCO World Heritage Site to cover some facts. After you have watched both the lectures yesterday's and today's, you go and try to attempt that test. ठीक है? So let's start. The second category is early structures. If you see Mahabodhi Temple at Bodh Gaya, Sanchi, Ajanta, Ellora, Elephanta, Nalanda, of which Bodh Gaya is purportedly a Buddhist. Why I am saying purportedly? Because it is nonetheless, it is a Buddhist site and it is inscribed in UNESCO for a Buddhist context as well. But Bodh Gaya is also important for all other religions in India, like Jainism and various sects of Hinduism. So it makes a complete complex. But as far as the citation or inscription in UNESCO is concerned, it is primarily because of its Buddhist connection. We have Sanchi, again, the first great stupa complex in India, and it set in motion the concept of stupa and the model for stupa. But as we have seen in one class, that Sanchi stupa is not the model for all these stupas. Although it is the most iconic stupa, we study that, we draw the figure, right? Medi, Toran, etc., Harmika, Anda. It is not the template for all these stupas. We have stupas in various regions of various types. South Indian stupas are different than Afghan stupas, than other stupas. This Sanchi stup is the representative of only Central Indian stupas or some UP Bihar stupas. Then we have Ajanta caves, Ellora caves. So we have rock cut architecture as well in Ajanta, Ellora, Elephanta. Elephanta is a cave for elephant god, right? That is Ganesh. Then
Shiva,
Sadashiva Murti, Trimurti, right? So in all these sites, we have only two which are primarily non-Buddhist, and others are primarily Buddhist. That is the point. We have some structures built, some caves dug, and some brick structures built. So stone, cave, rock cut, and brick, everything is represented over here. Let us start one by one. The first is Mahabodhi Temple complex at Bodh Gaya. Let us read the UNESCO inscription first, and then we'll get to the basics. The Mahabodhi Temple complex is one of the 4 holy sites related to the life of Lord Buddha. The first question that comes to our mind is, which are these 4 sites? So tell me. These are the 4 sites. Identify them. Vedanti ma'am. Which is this site? Think of life of Buddha. He is born first, the birthplace. Where is birthplace? Lumbini. Lumbini is in Nepal.
Nepal.
To be very specific, Madhes in Nepal. Okay. So you have Lumbini over here. Then what happens after that? ठीक है, renunciation है, उसको महानिविष्कर्मण बोलते हैं हम. Then he comes for enlightenment and meditation. All this. Where does that happen? Bodh Gaya. Where is Bodh Gaya?
Bihar.
Right. ठीक है. This is done. Then he gives his first sermon. He sets the wheel of Dhamma in motion. Dhamma Chakka Pavattana. We have even seen the Dhamma Chakka Pavattana Sutra देखा था हमने. Anyway, so that is over here. Then where does that happen? Sarnath. And then ultimately dies at the age of 80. Where? Kushinara or Kushinagar. So it is over here. Simple mapping question that may be asked, or match the pairs wala. So very easy. UPSC doesn't ask these questions anymore. Still. Come back. So 4 holy sites. And particularly to the attainment of enlightenment, so we have Bodh Gaya. It was Gaya, and Bodh itself means he got Sambodhi. Sambodhi is enlightenment. Prabodh, Sambodh, these are typical words. The first temple was built by Emperor Ashok in the 3rd century BC, and the present temple dates from the 5th or 6th centuries. So it means that there is almost 800 years of gap between the actual temple which was erected there and the structure that stands today. Even the structure that stands today is not in reality the complete structure as it was built by Guptas or during the age of Guptas. This structure that you see over here, it is a tall stupa kind of thing. It is built in bricks and some stones as well. It was completely in a dilapidated situation in 17th, 18th, 19th century, etc. It was rebuilt based on some images and plaques and sculptures by British. So if you go by the norms of authenticity, will this temple belong to Buddha? So British constructed this temple, or rather reconstructed it. ये हमारी बात हो गई थी. And then, so we are talking about the norms of authenticity. If you go by European modernist norms, it is a structure which is hardly 200 years old. But if you go by the layers of history and progressive authenticities that we discussed yesterday, it is 2400, 2300 years old structure. It has that importance. It is one of the earliest Buddhist temples built entirely in brick, still standing in India from the late Gupta period. So when we see the emergence of temple architecture in India, we start with threefold classification: Nagar, Dravid, Vesar. In the Dravid, the oldest we find are in Pallava era. In Vesar, the oldest we find in Badami, Aihole, Pattadkal, in early Chalukya. And in Nagar, the oldest we find is in Gupta era, right? 5th century, etc. Temples used to exist even before that. The structures are not existing anymore. For example, we have seen many temples, like pre-Guptan temples have not survived. The oldest available typical are Gupta temples. And this is one of the Gupta temples in that sense, although it is not original. It is entirely in brick. Next. So I don't want to go into details of temple because it is very interesting history of colonial archivist and colonial excavations, etc. But these 3 are important things that we need to know. Other these 4 things. First thing is Bodhi tree. We know this is a Bodhi tree. It is the 3rd or 4th generation since Buddha. Old tree went on for many, many decades and centuries. It died, then a branch, and again new tree. So it is going on in cycle. This is 3rd or 4th generation of tree since Buddha, of the same tree. And people go and pray there. Now, if you see the Unesco website, they have specifically listed out the places around the Bodhi tree where Buddha meditated for 7 weeks before he got enlightenment. Week by week, what happened? It is there available in everywhere, all the books. But generally, UPSC में हम नहीं पढ़ते. But UNESCO has given it a complete big paragraph, a large paragraph. So I have just stabilized it for you in a very short form. Buddha meditated for 7 weeks, and what he did where? Around the tree. The substantial point is, if you look by the lens of holiness, religiosity, then the temple is coming later in the Mauryan time. but 200 years before that the tree was there, and the tree is considered holier than the temple. And even not because it is older, because it is the structure that was there when Buddha was there, or tree was there when Buddha was there, but even for the succeeding centuries after the temple was built, even then temple was a secondary thing, the tree was the primary thing. Only in recent few centuries we have started giving equal importance to both of them. So by norms of authenticity, and the Bodhi Gaya is not because of the temple but primarily because of the tree. Okay. Anyway, so these are 7 weeks. So for the first week, Buddha meditated under the tree itself. Then he started staring at the tree from the northeast of the present temple. There a small stupa is built today. It is called as Animesh Lochan Stupa. Animesh means half closed, half open eye. Buddha is looking at the tree like this for 1 week. Then you have third week, Buddha is walking from tree to that place and forth, back and forth. So on that path, they have now Ratna Chakrama, jewel path. They have built some small foots and lotuses, etc. And likewise, so you have one place in the northeast of temple where they have built Ratnaghar Chaitya, where Buddha meditated on the 4th week. So we have this 7-week plan Buddha did before he reached enlightenment. It is very, I did not consider myself as important, but because UNESCO has given complete paragraph, I thought we should know it. So trees holiness being more important than temple, that is the underlying point. Second point is this. This is Vedika, that is fence. When we study stupa, we see Vedikas as well. And this Vedika is actually the oldest part structurally of the temple existing. It was built by Shungas. Whatever Ashoka had built has gone. It doesn't exist anymore. Shungas, after Ashoka, who came to power, although they were Brahmins, they built the fencing for this thing, Bodh Gaya temple. And they contributed a lot to the development of sculptural motifs and narratives of Buddhist. So you see the Shunga with various lotus medallions and other kinds of medallions and sculptural part. It is still existing. Some of it is newly built, some of it is rebuilt, recreated, some is older. It is still there. And then we have this Vajrasan. Now, if you see, Buddha is supposed to have sit here. And this Vajrasan was built in stone by Ashoka. It was lost in the annals of history. And recently in colonial times, a couple of 100 years ago, it was discovered in excavation. So it is still there today. If you go, now you can't see it like this because इसको पूरा ढका गया है चादर से सबसे उसको मतलब पूजा करते हैं उसकी. So this was the one when it was found in excavation, Vajrasan. You can find this on many sculptures and coins as well. It is still there. It is built by Ashoka. So these 4 important things: tree, the schedule of 7 weeks, Vedikas of Shunga, and Vajrasan. Otherwise, all other important things are given in this inscription. Okay? Let us move on. Next Buddhist site, that is Buddhist monuments at Sanchi. When we say Sanchi, we generally mean Sanchi Stupa. It is right as well as wrong. Not because, see, this is the most emblematic thing that is available to us, right? Sanchi Stupa, the most iconic thing. But if you read the inscription, why Sanchi is inscribed into UNESCO World Heritage Site list is not only because of that stupa, but many things apart from that. So let us read it. On a hill overlooking the plain and above 40 kilometers from Bhopal. So we know the story of Bhopal ki Rani helping, stopping destruction, etc. The site of Sanchi comprises a group of Buddhist monuments. So a group of Buddhist monuments. It is not only a stupa and not only that specific stupa. So there is a schematic of the Sanchi. It's a small hillock, and on the top of hill we have this little plain area in which you have various monuments. So group of monuments, of which one is the famous Sanchi Stupa. That is the one over here. It is called Stupa number 1. Where Stupa number 3, Stupa number 2, up to the many items. Almost 40-45 structures are there. Even in front of the Sanchi Stupa, we have one old temple. Only the pillars of which are, it looks like a Greek temple. Right, and we know that there was a lot of give and take between India and the Hellenistic world at that time. Monolithic pillars, palaces, temples, and monasteries, all things are there. But this stupa has survived. In different states of conservation, most of which date back to the 2nd and 1st centuries BC, means after the age of Mauryas. Okay. Although the old stupa or the inner core of stupa in brick was built in Ashokan time, this stupa is not how it looked at time of Ashoka. It is the one which was embellished later by Shungas and Satvahanas. तब जाके सुंदर बना है वो. It is the oldest Buddhist sanctuary in existence and was a major Buddhist center in India until 12th century AD. So for almost 1000 years, it was a major site. Why? Not because of its significance of place in the history of Buddhism. Buddhist history has nothing to do with Sanchi place. Buddha never went to Sanchi. If you see stupa क्यों build किए जाते हैं, तो उसमें एक होता है बुद्धा ने वहां पे कुछ कहीं गया होगा, भाषण दिया होगा, कुछ जन्म मृत्यु कुछ ना कुछ. Buddhist, there is no proof that Buddha ever went to Sanchi at all. But Ashoka was there when he was Rajaputra. Kumar जब था, he was posted, and Sanchi and Bhopal और वो सारा उज्जैन ये एरिया जो था, that was strategically important. Provincial capital थी. And more importantly, Uttarapath and Dakshinapath, इनको जोड़ने वाला रास्ता जो है. So this is India. We have Uttarapath going like this. We have Mathura. We have ports over here, which are having trade with Roman Empire. And Dakshinapath is coming like this. And on Dakshinapath, at the center, we have here places like Ujjain, Sanchi, etc. So they are strategically important trade routes. के ऊपर है वो. So Sanchi got, and therefore many people went there. Traders गए तो दान दक्षिणा कर दी, करके वो धीरे 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 for 1000 years Sanchi. The moment you hit enter medieval times, economic structure of India starts changing. Trade routes change, cities change. Ancient cities are no more important. New cities are coming up. Routes are changing. So old cities fall into disuse. Ajanta is desolate. Sanchi is gone. Khajuraho is gone. Then they remain buried for thousands of years, and then now we again find them in colonial time. Okay. So it is the oldest Buddhist sanctuary that was important for almost 1000 years. Let us look at some important aspects. It is a religious place with historical and archaeological significance. So it has three primary significance. So if you have to write a note on Sanchi in some aspect, it will contain at least three dimensions. One dimension about religion. Now, what is the religious significance? We'll see. One dimension about archaeological significance and one historical role. Historical, you can have political, economic, trade, whatever. Or even from the point of view of sources of history. Contribution of Ashoka, Shunga, Satvahana, Gupta, all dynasties that ruled that part contributed to its embellishment gradually. Ornamented gateways with bodhisattvas and stories, vitality, happiness, harmony in society with animal and plenty. So you have these toranas, that is gateways, which have structure like this with the unfurling scroll as to suggest the story is still unfolding. So drama आता है उसमें. And we have various stories from the life of Buddha or of Bodhisattva, or even historical stories of Ashoka and various Janpadas and Mahajanpadas. Okay, so there is no need to go into each and every story, but that can be done very easily. We have 4 toranas. Each torana has 3 in the front, 3 in the back. So 6, the 24 stories, at least on the isko bolte architrave, and then other stories over here and here. So 40-45 stories are there to tell. It acted as Sistine Chapel. जो अनपढ़ लोग जाते थे, लिटरेसी नहीं थी, पेंटिंग देख के अच्छा था, इसकी स्टोरी पता चलती थी उनको. इन पुराणिक कल्चर, पुराणिक हिंदुइज्म, पुराणास वेर परफॉर्म्ड ऑन स्ट्रीट थिएटर. स्क्रोल पेंटिंग होते थे to convey the story to the masses who can't read. Similarly, it performed that function. When you come to the stupa at that time, you would see the stories. You already know the stories, you have heard them, so you can see them manifested on walls, and you get connected to it. So for us, from the historical point of view, what is important is what kind of knowledge you gain about the existing society, contemporary society. So what does it show? At the emotion, vitality, happiness of people, harmony. You have animals, you have people, you have cities, you have processions. So richness, prosperity, happiness, gaiety, that kind of feeling you get when you look at these sculptures. No anthropomorphic Buddha. So we know Buddhism transformed from Hinayan to Mahayan and then Vajrayan, right? And Hinayan, Mahayan में major difference from our point of view है कि Hinayan Buddha is represented as symbols, an iconic Buddhism. And then in Mahayan, Buddha is praised as a god and not as a human being. He is not a great teacher only, he is also a god. उसको elevate किया गया, apotheosis. ठीक है? And then बुद्धा की मूर्ति बनना शुरू होती. So in Gandhar, Mathura, when that part is emerging, that is also part when Mahayan is coming up. Okay. So we have Sanchi Stupa, which got built and embellished largely before Mahayan influence started coming up. सो सांची में बुद्धा की मूर्ति कहीं भी नहीं पाई जाती. नो बुद्धा मूर्ति इज देयर इन सांची. What we have is representations of Buddhist stories and narratives through symbols. We have other murtis, no problem. If you look at Ajanta, Ajanta was built over again 700-800 years with the gap of 400 years in between. So first phase of Ajanta is in Hinayan time. We have no Buddha painting. Then you have a gap of a few hundred years, and then you have another phase of Ajanta building, and we have painting and sculpture again in which Buddha is represented. So earlier historians used to call first phase as Hinayan phase, gap, and Mahayan phase. ठीक है. So this is a typical. Somebody asked yesterday, ki, okay, Yashasvi, is this voice still breaking, or are you able to hear me? आवाज सबको ठीक से आ रही है?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I have to type. I can't listen. Okay. Oh, still breaking. Nitin, yes. Anybody else who is having that problem with breaking of voice? Yes and no, sir. आवाज ठीक आ रही है, voice. Okay, ठीक है. Yashasvi, I think you might have to look at your connectivity. So this is a typical schematic that we draw. You don't even need to draw this much. You can simply draw outline of this, and that would be good. We know Pradakshina path at 2 level, Toran on 4 end, Chhatra, Harmika, Anda, Medhi, Toran, Sopan, etc. Vedika. This is Vedika, enclosure wall. Nothing is there inside. It is a completely filled kind of dome, and from the top we can dig in and find the remains of some important parts. Some Buddhist remains, Buddha's teeth, bone, some चश्मा, अगर ऐनक गांधी जी के ऐनक टाइप कुछ चीजें वो यूज की होंगी तो ठीक है, काठी. So such things that they use their body remains or other parts, dhatu and other memorabilia around which the stupa is built to commemorate that. तो स्तूपा का पर्पस ही वो होता है, it's a mound of dead. ठीक है. So in Sanchi we have 3 mini stupas, but 3 important stupas. They are called stupa number 1, number 2, number 3. The one that we see over here is a great stupa, that is stupa number 1. It is famous because of Shunga and Satvahana embellishment of sculpture. ठीक है. So it is not important from religion point of view as much. It is more important from history and artistic point of view. We have stupa number 2, which is hardly embellished. It is older than the first one. Here we have Vedika, and on Vedika you see small sculptures like you saw in the Mahabodhi temple as well. But this is older one. And here you see some kind of small embellishment. So it is called as the birthplace of Buddhist narration. This is the oldest place जहाँ पे Buddhist sculpture पाया जाता है, जहाँ से कहानियां पता चलती है ever. यहाँ से this is the first point in the history of India. ठीक है. And third point is stupa number 3, where relics of Sariputta and Mahamogallana. So these were 2 famous disciples or followers of Buddha. उनके धातु मतलब बॉडी रिमेन्स जलाने के बाद जैसे भी हो उनको इसके अंदर रखा गया है. हर्मिका, छतरी, you have dhatu in between. So this is important from the religion point of view. This is from the sculptural history point of view, and this is overall artistic history and historic point of view. ठीक है? No. Yes. So he took all the relics. See, after his death, relics of Buddhas were divided in 8 parts and distributed in 8 places. That is hundreds of years before Ashoka. When Ashoka era came, he thought of collecting them all. So he got 7 of them. एक के साथ war हुआ. War की story भी हमने repeat की है स्तूपा के ऊपर. And then he collected them and then distributed 84,000. And he was the main vehicle behind the spread of the stupa cult across Indian subcontinent. दोनों अलग है. Let us move on next. Ajanta caves. The first Buddhist cave monuments at Ajanta date from the 2nd and 1st centuries BC. That is, I said, the earlier phase. Then there is a gap of few centuries. And during the Gupta period, 5th and 6th centuries, many more richly decorated caves were added to the original group. The paintings and sculptures of Ajanta, considered masterpieces of Buddhist religious art, have had a considerable artistic influence. See, points क्या है यहाँ पे? Firstly, chronology. in the era of whom, which influence, etc. Mahinian phase, Mahayan phase, Vaka patronage की बात है यहाँ पे, time and space and patronage. Then you have paintings and sculpture, which are the masterpieces of Buddhist religious art. If you look at the religious arts of various religions in India, each religion expresses itself in various forms. Buddhism is one religion in which you will not find Buddhist music. You will hardly find, we have few of them which are very important, but they did not become mainstream, that is Buddhist drama. Buddhist performing arts are not much in vogue. And even historically, we are not sure where they in vogue or not. On the other hand, you see Puranic Hinduism, Shaivism, Vaishnavism, performing arts of dance, drama, music in the Puranic culture is very important, along with other things. Anyway, so when we say Buddhist religious art, we primarily mean sculpture and architecture and painting. That is visual arts. And they have considerable artistic influence across the Buddhist world in Asia at that time. If you go to Sigiriya in Sri Lanka, which is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which is directly influenced by Ajanta. If you go to Dunhuang Cave in Taklamakan Desert in China on Silk Route, again completely influenced by Ajanta. Even the techniques of painting, Indian painters went there. If you go to Bagh Caves in Madhya Pradesh, Dhar district, influenced by Ajanta. So Ajanta became the most important standard for the artistic excellence across Buddhist Asia at that time. And for centuries afterward, it was copied and then modified regionally also, suitably. So let us move on. Some facts. The Ajanta caves are Hindu and Buddhist caves built in two phases, Satvahana phase and Vakataka phase. If you look at the plan from the top, it looks like this. It's a Waghora river, and we have a hill that is a basaltic escarpment. And in the basalt, you have dug in various such viharas and chaityas and stupas. The yellow one are chaityas. Chaitya is the one which contains the stupa. When stupa is built inside the cave for the purpose of prayer, it is called chaitya. So you see in the chaitya at the end, you have gold stupa, circular stupa. In this vihar, in this chaitya, you have pillars and then again stupa, pillars and then again stupa. So it is chaitya. And others are viharas, that is for the resting of monks. So if you see, there are two phases. Hinayan phase, which was patronized by early Satvahanas, who came to power after the fall of or decline of Mauryas. And we have later phase, that is Vakataka phase. Vakatakas were contemporary of Guptas. When Guptas ruled North India, Vakatakas ruled Deccan. And in their realm, we find Ajanta being rebuilt. So it has very definite imprint and influence of Gupta art, because that was the vogue, that was in vogue at that time. But if you see very closely, it was not under Gupta control. There is a story of Prabhavati Gupta indirectly controlling, वो सब अलग बात है, but it was the domain of Vakatakas, not of Guptas. Okay. So Satvahana era, Hinayan phase, Vakataka era, Mahayan phase, and there is a gap of almost 500 years in between, during which we do not have any activity there. The most important chaityas and viharas in the first phase are listed here, and likewise in the second phase. We don't need to remember these numbers. Don't worry about that. There are 31 rock-cut cave monuments, which are unique representations of the religious art of Hinduism and primarily Buddhism. So I will make you go through 3 slides very quickly. One is Ajanta structures. Let us not go into details of these things. This is a chaitya. You have pillars, vaulted roof, apsidal back, and stupa in between. Like Mukhalinga and Vigrahalinga in Shaivism, on this stupa the Buddha is carved. So when Buddha is carved on it, it means it belongs to Satvahan phase, right? Vakataka phase. Satvahan is the first phase, Hinayana wali. And then you have some structure like this. So Chhatri and Harmika got evolved. You can see it looks like pagoda. So when stupa art transformed as it traveled across Silk Route from India to Afghanistan to Central Asia to China to Japan and Korea, it became pagoda. Stupa is the pagoda, nothing else. Okay. Here we have Gavaksha, the facade, that is the highest evolved version of what had started in Bihar a few centuries ago in Mauryan era, Barabar caves. उसका गवाक्ष जो था फेमस था, वहां से वो कला चलती आई, यहाँ तक इवॉल्व हुई है. We have multi-storied one as well. Let us not go into structural details, but there are many things to discuss. Second thing that we discuss is sculpture in Ajanta, and there are various sculptural techniques. We have huge sculptures of Mahabalipuram. ठीक है? We have some sculptures where shadow is used very craftingly. The main figure which is important is larger, and subsidiary figures are around in a smaller shape. So it is not realism. It is more kind of impressionism. What happens in mind that matters. Anyway. And then the third thing after structure and sculpture is painting. And there are various techniques of painting as well to create an illusion of 3D, perspective, multiple vision, foreshortening, various animnotte, etc., color techniques. So various techniques of time, of spacing and volume uses and line techniques and color techniques are used to give an impression that the things are three-dimensional. That is the level of sophistication of Ajanta art. Again, we have phase, Hinayan phase, Mahayan phase, dynasties, and some features. Buddha through symbols, Jataka, Sturya, and Avadanas, floral and animal motifs. These are the motifs, themes. We have higher degree of craftsmanship and draughtsmanship. Draughtsman is linemanship. And caves ke example. This is one photo. We have some ceiling, painting on ceiling, some painting on pillars, some painting on walls. This is the famous one on which UPSC already asked a question 2 years ago. The famous painting of Avalokiteshvara Padma Pani. Okay. He was a bodhisattva. So once if the question is asked specifically on painting, you do not just write painting के बुद्धिज्म था, बुद्धा था, जातका स्टोरीज थी, कलर नेचुरल कलर यूज करते थे. यार ऐसे मत लिखो, थोड़ा आगे भी जाओ, उसके सोचो. So you can divide the answer in multiple parts. One way could be the techniques, eras, themes, and when you go to subject matter, you can write religious ideals and Buddhist morals. So paintings are supposed to convey something, and what are they conveying? So we have these all things. Okay, and again some examples as well over here. Ajanta paintings distinctly portray multicultural society. You see the people with different skin colors are together. We even have an example of people wearing indigo blue wala socks, which was Iranian. So we know Ajanta is built at Ajanta, or rather excavated at Ajanta, because it also fell on the trade route. The trade route was going to Western coast, and Western coast was trading with Central Asia, not Central Asia, Western Asia and Rome. So लोगों का आना जाना चलता रहता था. So these were highly exposed people. ठीक है. Then you come to Ellora cave, very nearby. These 34 monasteries and temples extending over more than 2 kilometers were dug side by side in the wall of a high basalt cliff, not far from Aurangabad in Maharashtra. So we know the story of Kailas cave in Ellora, that they started from top. The story, queen ने कहा था मैं खाऊंगी नहीं जब तक मंदिर नहीं बनेगा. The Raja said, let us build the top first and then build the bottom. तो उसको रानी को दूर से दिखाया, देख भाई मंदिर बन गया उसका. रानी थोड़ा अगर टॉप बने हो तो नीचे बना ही होगा. Then she broke her fast, started eating. राजा वो अच्छा मरेगी नहीं अब. तो सब लीजेंड्स है वहां पे, इतनी गाथा सप्तशती वगैरह. Anyway, so with its uninterrupted sequence of monuments dating from 600 to 1000 AD. So this is the time when Ajanta has matured and now Ellora is beginning. Ellora ka Kailas cave represents the pinnacle or the zenith of the art of rock cut architecture that started in Barabar caves, right? In Mauryan era, almost 800 years it took, 8 to 900 years, and the zenith it reached is this. After that there is fall. Brings the civilization of ancient India to life. Not only is the Ellora complex a unique artistic creation and a technological exploit, but with its sanctuaries devoted to Buddhism, Hinduism, and Jainism, it illustrates the spirit of tolerance that was characteristic of ancient India. This is important. Generally, they ask many MCQs, like at Badami, you have monuments of Buddhism, Jainism, Shaivism, etc. At Ajanta, it is purely Buddhist, no Buddha plus Jaina. Ellora, Jaina, Buddha. So, मतलब ये question typical आते हैं. You should make a table of important sites and वहाँ पे कौन कौन है, Buddhist, Jainis and Hindu में कौन नहीं है, कौन है. Don't make those mistakes. Very lollipop points are those. You should not be able to, should not make them incorrect. The point is basalt cliff, uninterrupted sequence. Then you have artistic creation, technological exploit, and spirit of tolerance. Up, you have to remember these many points. When you have to go further, then you go into elaboration of these points. But these are the major dimensions. Come to the slide on facts. This is a list of some structural features. If you see, this is a typical structure of temple in which at the entrance you have a gopuram, that is the gateway entrance. Toran is the gopuram in stupa. Temple में gopuram होता है. Then you have Nandi mandap. Nandi is तो कैलाश है, शंकर का है तो नंदी होगा. And they have built a small mandap, small structure for Nandi as well. Not built, but dug, but in the context. Anyway, main temple. And main temple has its all parts, various types of mandapas, mahamandapas, antaralas, garbhagruhas, etc. Typical structural features. And then asides, you have excavation on both the sides and painting galleries. On one side Shaiva, other side Vaishnava, and various paintings and sculptures as well. And with Dhwajastambhas and elephant sculptures, large, huge size. So it is cultural mix of religious arts of Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, not Kailas, but the entire complex. Kailas is purely Shaiva, with some on one side Vaishnava paintings as well. 34 monasteries and temples sculpted continuously into rock walls of a high basalt cliff and almost 2 kilometers. So these are other facts. So this is the photo taken from the Gopuram side. So you have entry. This is Nandi Mandap. You have one thing joining. This is the main temple, Mahamandap, and here Antara, and in the backside Garbhagruha. Here we have Dhwajastambha, and likewise, entirely dug from top to bottom. At one point of time, it was completely painted. Painting is gone. Elephanta caves. Elephanta caves are in Mumbai. Why are they called Elephanta caves? If there is no Ganesha Murti, then why? Because at one point of time there was a huge Elephanta sculpture. Elephanta caves were called locally as Gharapuri caves. It was called Elephanta by Portuguese because when Portuguese used to rule that part of India, when Mumbai had not become Mumbai or Bombay had not become Bombay, before British got the control of this land, Portuguese used to have Portuguese forts भी वहाँ पे आपको 2-3 पाए जाते हैं. They used to come here and they found what is this sculpture and all devil, so they destroyed everything. Because Portuguese were very determined to spread Christianity across the world at that point of time. गोवा की हिस्ट्री भी उस तरह थोड़ी कॉम्प्लेक्स हो जाती है. एनीवे, सो दे यूज्ड टू, ये सैटेनिक चीजें हैं, इनको खत्म कर दो. एलिफेंट का बहुत बड़ा स्कल्पचर था, दे ब्रॉट इट समवेयर टू मेनलैंड, दैट इज कोई और जगह है वो आजकल बहुत सारी आर्ट म्यूजियम में. रेस्ट ऑफ द स्कल्पचर्स दे यूज्ड टू यूज एज फायरिंग प्रैक्टिस रेंज. फायरिंग की प्रैक्टिस करनी, इसका हाथ में गोली मारो, उसके आंख में गोली मारो. उनके सिपाहियों के लिए फायरिंग प्रैक्टिस रेंज की तरह दे यूज्ड टू यूज एलिफेंटा केव्स के स्कल्पचर्स. सो मच सो फॉर हेरिटेज कंजर्वेशन. The city of caves, that is Elephanta, on an island in the Sea of Oman. Now, I am myself confused why UNESCO is calling Mumbai Sea as Sea of Oman. We will call Arabian Sea. But I have taken this screenshot somewhere. Okay, it's not there. UNESCO is using the word Sea of Oman. I think it is incorrect. It is Arabian. Sea of Oman is near Oman, not here. But anyway, close to Bombay, contains a collection of rock art linked to the cult of Shiva. Here, Indian art has found one of its most perfect expressions, particularly the huge high reliefs in the main cave. So whatever had happened in Kailas cave is the same thing happening over here. Huge structures, but they're not bulky. In the game of shadow, they are elegant yet huge, like Taj Mahal. Taj Mahal is a huge structure. It's in the photo, it looks a very light thing. It's like floating. Similarly, you will find many graceful but huge structures in Elephanta as well. The small island of Gharapuri off the coast of Mumbai has a rich cultural past. Occupation from as early as 2nd century BCE constructed about in the mid 5th to 6th century AD. Today we'll call it CE. Still, so it is also of Gupta era, contemporary of the later phase of Ajanta and before Kailas. 2 groups of caves, 5 Hindu caves and 2 Buddhist caves, sculptures hewn in solid basalt rock and Portuguese destruction. Now, if you have to write an answer explaining what kind of sculptures are there, I have given a few lines for you to understand. Forms, dimension, themes, representations, content, alignment, execution. So a typical art historian would explain the sculpture using these dimensions. We don't need to go into it at all. But these are the dimensions. Form कैसे है, वगैरह, alignment कैसी है. For UPSC it is not required, but you need to know what are all the dimensions to explain the art. Combination of aesthetic beauty with sculptural art, replete with resplendent rasas. This is rasas. Navarasa Sungara Veera Kronadbhuta Hasya Bhayanakaha Vivatsarudro Shantashcha iti Navarasa Mata. All the rasas you can see through this life events of Shiva in various sculptures. So it's like complete rasa gallery if you know the stories. And so you are a rasika. Sculptures seem to move with changing light and have dramatic effect. Images emerging from uniformly dark background. Famous Trimurti of Shiva, huge one. So 7-meter high masterpiece of Sadashiv, creator, preserver, destroyer, जो अभी हमने देखा. There are various theories कि चौथा पीछे है कि नहीं है. पुरानिक स्टोरीज लेके लोग कंपेयर करते हैं. That is उनका historians का time pass. Noteworthy representations of Nataraj, Yogeshwara, Andhakasurvada. Andhakasurvada is very beautiful. Then Ardhanarishwara, Kalyana Sundaramurti. Kalyana Sundaramurti is the one who is marrying Kalyanam in South India. Then Gangadhara Murti, Ravana Anugraha Murti. Ravan को अनुग्रह दिया है. कैलाश में वही है. Ravan is asking for the boon from the Shankar. Ravana Anugraha Murti. So these are various forms of Shiva and stories through which you get to know all the rasas. See, these names are important not because you have to study Puranic history, but because let us say you get a question on Chola sculpture. You will write Nataraj की मूर्ति पाई जाती है, उसके आगे क्या लिखोगे? So you need to be able to understand कि what are other forms, Bhikshatana Mudra, other forms of Kalyana Sundara Murti. So at least 3-4 names of Shiva sculptures we should know. Then you have Nalanda. UPSC asked question this time on Pala contribution Buddhism. Nalanda is the central aspect of that. Nalanda sees and aids and rather leads the transformation of Buddhism from Mahayana to Vajrayana. Pala ke pehle Nalanda was the standard bearer of Mahayana Buddhism. In Pala, it became the standard bearer of Vajrayana Buddhism. And various forms of Vajrayana were spread across Himalayan belt by the people of Nalanda. Nalanda के लोगों ने जाके तिब्बत को बुद्धिस्ट बनाया, सिक्किम को बुद्धिस्ट बनाया, नेपाल में बुद्धिस्ट, मतलब people from Nalanda used to go and visit this place and convert people. तिब्बत की कहानी तो ऐसी कि कोई गया था, Tibet became Buddhist, then somehow after the king died, it went back to its original religion. Nalanda people said, how can it be possible? I'll send another person. Then Atish Dipankar Siddhyan was sent 100 years later to convert Tibet back to Buddhism again. Okay. So Nalanda has a huge role in the transformation of Buddhism from Mahayana to Vajrayana, firstly, and secondly, spread of Buddhism from East Asia to rest of the world. The locus of Buddhism has changed. This is the time of era. This is the era after Guptas, like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 centuries, in which Buddhism is facing multiple threats. From the western side, you see emergence of Hunas who fought for centuries with Guptas, and after that, Turkish people have come. From south, you have emergence of Bhakti, Alvars and Nainars and Bhakti saints are coming. Acharya Parampara is started. So Buddhism is receding. It is almost gone, and suddenly a flicker comes. Pala Empire. So when everywhere else Buddhism is gone, Pala is like Buddhism को हम आगे लेके जाएंगे. So उसका बहुत historically बड़ा context है. उसमें Nalanda important है. Anyway, let us read the Nalanda Mahavihar. हाँ, it is a vihar जहाँ पे monastery है. People used to come together and learn and sit. So Bihar is studded with many viharas, and that's why it is called Bihar. East में वो को ब बोलते हैं. बंग बंगाल, वंग बंग एक ही है, वंग भंग, ठीक है. So Bihar is nothing but Bihar. Before that, it was called something else. मगध है, अदर रीजन्स है, मैथिली रीजन है, etc. There are many viharas in eastern part of India, some in Bihar, some in Bengal, some in Bangladesh today, and some of them are Mahaviharas. And these Mahaviharas important for the spread of knowledge. And some of them are Sangharamas. Sangharama is complete complex with various other buildings as well, Sangharamas. So, northeastern India, it comprises the archaeological remains of a monastic and scholastic institution. Monastic and scholastic, two important words, dating from the 3rd century BCE to 13th century, 1000 years continuously. Okay. Although the earlier centuries, it is not so significant structurally. Sir, could you explain the story of Mara Vijay? I just saw it. I'll explain it afterwards. Okay. It includes stupas, shrines, viharas, and important artworks in stucco, stone, and metal. So when you have to write about Nalanda, Nalanda is not because of only education center and Buddhism. We have stupas, other shrines, viharas, and art in stucco, stone, and metal. Now it has a very specific context. The context is that we see the history of sculpture in India. We see 3 parts: Mathura sculpture, Gandhar sculpture, and Amravati sculpture. That is in the post-Mauryan era. What happened afterwards? So Mathura sculpture evolved into Sarnath school, and Sarnath school became Nalanda school. And Nalanda is carrying forward the tradition in refined form. Gupta ke baad wale era mein. So Nalanda tradition absorbed Mathura tradition into it. And the sculpture is in stucco, stone, and metal, all of them. Nalanda stands out as the most ancient university of the Indian subcontinent. Now, university, not Takshashila or Taxila, but Nalanda. Because Takshashila, Nalanda comparison was asked by UPSC already a few years ago, 4 years, 5 years ago. And that was in the context ki wahi, I think Amartya Sen ki kitab mein chapter tha, and he had written some article in newspaper that became very important that year. So, सवाल पूछ लिया था. Comparison between Nalanda and Takshashila. Takshashila was a huge place with lot of small gurukuls. It's a cluster of gurukuls, each teacher and his disciples. But Nalanda is organized university with administration and departments, libraries, etc. So both of them have huge historical importance. We cannot compare who is better or important, but Nalanda is organized institution. Takshashila is cluster of many small gurukuls. ये important फर्क है. नालंदा में रेक्टर होगा, डीन होगा, डायरेक्टर होगा, एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन होगा, एंट्रेंस एग्जाम होगी, सब कुछ होगा. Takshashila, each teacher will look after himself. And there is a difference of years, centuries as well. Takshashila died first in the Hona invasion wala era, and then Nalanda started becoming important. Anyway, engaged in the organized transmission of knowledge over an uninterrupted period of 800 years. The historical development of the site testifies to the development of Buddhism. That is what we talked about. Mahayana ka importance, Vajrayana ka transformation. So historical development of the site testifies to the development of Buddhism into a religion and then flourishing to monastic and educational traditions. It's a stamp. Go on, facts. A seal identifies. So there are some facts of various important patrons and people who were connected to Nalanda. Nalanda was built by Guptas. That is important. And which Gupta? Kumar Gupta the first, who is called as Shakraditya in one of the seals. And then other Gupta supported it. When Samrat Harsh or Harsh Maharaj jab aate hain, Kannauj ke Harsh, then he also contributed to the development of Nalanda. And there are many stories around it. You have Yuan Sang visiting Nalanda, and where he also taught as a teacher for some years. He received 2 titles. एक है Shilabhadra and है Moksha Deva. Nothing but names of the same person. You have Yitzing or Yijing coming there, and then Palas, the last phase. So Nalanda and Pala is the last phase of Nalanda, not the first phase. Then you have other facts. This is the schematic of one part of Nalanda excavation. You have various viharas like this. Each vihara has a ground in between and various cells. Classes chalte the, wahan pe log rehte the teacher ke sath. the classrooms and residential faculties together. And we have a library. So it's a huge library complex consisting of 3 buildings in Nalanda. And these are libraries with manuscripts which are handwritten, by the way. 3 buildings only for manuscript storing, called Dharmaganj. We also know the names of 3 buildings: Ratna Sagar, Ratna Dari, Ratna Ranjak. So firstly, it is not Dharma Ganja, Dharma Ganj. ठीक है? It is Ratna, it is not Ratna दाढ़ी नहीं है, Ratna Dadhi, रत्न देने वाला, दाढ़ी मत बोलना उसको. ठीक है? So 3 buildings, each building is 9 माले की building है हर एक. You can think of the repository, all is gone. Anyway, curriculum of Hinayan, Mahayan, later Vajrayan also, and various other fine arts के साथ साथ scholarly, all types of things were taught there. And we have some comments by various travelers, Yuan Sang, Pahiyan, right? No. When Pahiyan came to India, he does not mention Nalanda, because at that time there was Nalanda, which was not important. When Yuan Sang comes at the time of Harsha, Nalanda has become important, and he came there specifically for Buddhist learning. So if MCQ is asked in which of the following travelers visited Nalanda, so Pahiyan did not visit Nalanda. ठीक है? He has not mentioned it. Confuse मत करना. Apart from that, I have this slide. So these are the places of education that were important in Pala era. These 2 are in Odisha, which fell outside Pala region. हम उनको study नहीं करते हैं, तो उनको भूल जाते हैं हम. But what we have is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These 5 are Pancha Mahavihar, patronized by Palas. Nalanda, Vikramshila, Somapura, Udantapuri, Jaggadala. Of which Somapura is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site today in Bangladesh. Nalanda is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Vikramshila, Udantapuri are in Bihar, and Jaggadala in Bangladesh. So this table is just a list of facts, context, when it started, when it finished. There's some important people associated with it, like Atish Dipankar Sridnyan, instrumental in spreading Buddhism to Tibet, etc. And then some significance. It's a factual slide, just for backup. आगे चलते, temple. So we have finished that part. ठीक है. Let us move on. Temple. So we have Pattadakal, Mahabalipuram, great living Chola temples, Kakatiya temple, which was Ramappa temple, inscribed this year only, Rudreshwara. We have Hampi, Khajuraho, and Konark. Now, almost on half of them, UPSC has already asked standalone questions. Chola question has been asked. Pattadakal Badami wala question. Mahabalipuram question asked earlier. So we need to be able to write. Hampi question was asked about Hampi architecture. So we need to be able to write answers on all of them. Pattadakal. Any questions so far? Do you have any questions so far? Okay. Let us move on. Pattadakal in Karnataka represents the high point of an eclectic art which in the 7th and 8th centuries under the Chalukyan dynasty achieved a harmonious blend of architectural forms of northern and southern India. So 7th 8th century, eclectic मतलब क्या होता है? Eclectic is selectively chosen with some conscious choice. ये choose किया है ये क्यों किया? Mix of different things, but done selectively and with purpose. An impressive series of 9 Hindu temples as well as a Jain sanctuary can be seen there. See, in most of the structures in Indian monument complexes, you will see that UNESCO says more than one faith are together, lying together with spirit of tolerance. That is always there. It's a context of India. So again, it will not be able to be easily categorized belonging to one religion or other religion. सबके लिए वही काशी जाओ, किसकी काशी? हिंदुओं की भी है, जैनों की भी, बुद्धों की भी है, हिंदू के अंदर शैवों की भी है, सबकी काशी है. ठीक है. तो one masterpiece from the group stands out the temple of Virupaksha. This is which one? This one. Virupaksha temple, built in 740 by Queen Loka Mahadevi to commemorate her husband's victory over the kings of the south, that is Pallavas. Okay. So we find UPSC asked a question on Virupaksha temple couple of times in the past. Where is Virupaksha temple found? Pattadagal and in Hampi. In Hampi also there is Virupaksha temple, which is important. So Hampi is also UNESCO World Heritage Site. We have two Virupaksha temples which are important from UNESCO point of view. Okay. Let us see. There was a king of Chalukya. This is Chalukyan Empire at that time. A Badami, Aihole, and Pattadakal nearby only. It's a triangle, BAP. Badami, Aihole, Pattadakal, and we have Pallava domain over here. And neighbors fight. So sometimes Pallava used to be powerful. Sometimes Chalukya used to have upper hand. And this fight went over centuries, like 100 years war. In European context, 30 years war, 70 years war, War of Roses, 100-year war. हम पढ़ते यूरोप में हम. In India also we have such wars. Chalukya and Pallava went on for 100 years. Rashtrakoot Chalukya went on for almost 50-70 years. These things go on. Intermittent fights. बाप का बदला बेटा लेगा type. For generations they used to fight. So there was this king of Chalukya called Vikramaditya II. He ruled for 40 years. In that he invaded Pallava territory thrice and conquered. The capital of Pallava is Kanchipuram. Almost 50 to 70 kilometers away from Chennai inland. Kanchipuram has a temple called Kailasnathar Temple, built by Pallavas, later Pallavas. A very beautiful temple. That Kailasnathar Temple and Kanchipuram are on the tentative UNESCO list for monuments. When the people from Chalukyan territory went there and they conquered Kanchi, he became Kanchi Konda, the one who have defeated and conquered Kanchi. But he saw the temple, he saw it very beautiful. मैं कुछ बनाऊंगा. Then he built Virupaksha temple. ठीक है. अब विरूपाक्ष बना है, उसके कुछ समय बाद झगड़ा होता है बिटवीन डेक्कन के और लोग एंड ये लोग चालुक्यन. Then the king from Deccan invades Chalukyan territory. He conquers Badami, Aihole, Pattadakal region. He sees, अच्छा इतना बड़ा टेम्पल बना है विरूपाक्ष, मैं कुछ बनाऊंगा. I'll copy something, and he builds Kailasnath temple in Ellora. So you have one UNESCO site over here, one UNESCO site on tentative list over here, and you have Ellora over here, and they are copying each other. They are not destroying the enemy site. They are going there, they are winning it. They are saying कितना अच्छा है, मैं भी ऐसे बनाऊंगा, आके अपने अलग से दोबारा बना दिया, वो भी यूनेस्को वर्ल्ड हेरिटेज बन गया. ठीक है. So anyway, when he went and conquered that part, his wife Loka Mahadevi, in the memory or commemoration of that victory, built his Virupaksha temple. That is the point. क्या होगा? It got stuck. क्या करूँ इसको? Okay. Other facts. Raktapura is another name of Pattadakal. It is in the valley of Malaprabha, Ghataprabha rivers, Malaprabha river in the Bagalkot district. Some facts. Expression of Hindu kingship. Now this is other. It is not only important from a religious point of view. Puranic Hinduism was closely associated with the idea of kingship in Hinduism. The ideal of Ram and stories of Mahabharatas and the morality they are telling us, moral stories, are inscribed as the philosophy of the empire, control of king, and how people should behave. The narrative sculpture that is there is selected from that perspective to impress upon the people's mind that king is so and so, divine है, नहीं है, कितना है, association कैसा है, लोगों ने कैसा बिहेव करना चाहिए. रामायण का प्रसार उसी के लिए होता है. कोई भी राजा रामायण को प्रचार क्यों करता है? नॉट बिकॉज राम का भक्त नेसेसरली हमेशा हो, लेकिन राम के लोग सुनेंगे तो मेरी भी सुनेंगे. ठीक है. So this is the thing. Move on. This Aihole, Badami, and Pattadakal. These three sites are very closely situated in Malaprabha, Ghataprabha valley in Bagalkot district, and all of them are extremely important for the evolution of the Vesara architecture, right? But do not confuse in their chronology. We have याद करो वो वेसर आर्किटेक्चर का सबसे फर्स्ट वो है, मतलब बाप है वो सबका. BAP, Badami is older. Aihole then comes, and the end comes Pattadkal. BAP सबका बाप है. If they ask chronology of these three things, पहले कौन सा था, confuse मत होना. First Badami, then Aihole, then Pattadkal. So Pattadkal exemplifies the epitome of the architectural activity going on for about a century before that. Started in Badami, more than a century. So Aihole in the 5th century served as the incubator for the concepts that would lead to the integration of styles. These concepts were further refined in Badami, and finally you have eclectic thing in Pattadkal. That is the point, and all of them are very important. This Badami, Aihole, Pattadkal is also on the tentative UNESCO World Heritage Site list as the entire landscape. Presently, only Pattadkal is there as individual site complex. Like Jantar Mantar became Jaipur ka UNESCO World Heritage Site, and now the Jaipur city has itself become UNESCO World Heritage Site. So in the same city, you have two things. When Delhi का चांदनी चौक एरिया बनेगा तो शायद हो सकता है कि दिल्ली में 2-3 बने एक ही जगह अलग अलग. Anyway, the temples at Pattadkal are symbolic of the Chalukyan inclination towards integration, experimentation, resulting in the merging of styles. So we can divide the temples into two parts. Some temples are clearly Nagar style, and some are more clearly Southern style. You do not need to remember all the names, but 3 names are important that we need to be knowing by heart. The first name is Papanatha Temple, very beautiful, and these two, Virupaksha and Mallikarjun. Each of them were built by one wife of the same king. Virupaksha was built by Lokeshwara Temple because Loka Mahadevi, and Mallikarjun Temple was built by Triloka Devi, so Trilokeshwara Temple. Typical MCQ, important related facts. And then we have one giant temple also. Next, group of monument at Mahabalipuram. Mahabalipuram is also called as Mamallapuram on the eastern coast. This group of sanctuaries, founded by the Pallava kings, Pallava is 6 to 8 centuries, was carved out of rock along with the Coromandel coast in the 7th and 8th centuries. It is known especially for its rathas, mandapas, giant open air relief. Relief is sculpture on wall of stone. As the, this is not stone necessarily, but in this context, such as the famous descent of Gangas and the temple of Rivage, with thousands of sculptures to the story of glory of Shiva. That is the shore temple. This is the shore temple in the back. See, this is map of India, and this is Mahabalipuram or Mamallapuram. There was a king called Narasingha Varman first. His other name was, or epithet was, Mamalla, and therefore, and he had a huge contribution in building some parts of Mahabalipuram, so it is also called as Mamallapuram. That is the point. It was a port city. It was a port city for trade with the east as well as west. By the time you come to 8th century, we see the trade with the Southeast Asia has increased a lot compared to west. Political changes काफी हुए थे. The Pallava dynasty, which ruled this area between 6th and 9th centuries, created these majestic edifices. These majestic edifices mark the high quality of craftsmanship. The natural landscape was utilized in carving out these structures, thereby making the ability of the Pallava craftsmen universally known. So these are very well situated in the context of the locality. उसके building कैसे है, पीछे समुंदर कैसा है, पहाड़, जो कुछ sand, all these things are important part of the architectural landscape of those monuments. Monuments in itself will carry lesser meaning compared to the entire context. It's a very beautiful small town. Today you go, बहुत सुंदर रखा है, अच्छा है, you'll enjoy. And the greater stress is given natural simplicity. This is important because when you come to Chola, as we will see, the simplicity is little receding and the ornate style is improved. So यहाँ पे naturalism बहुत ज़्यादा है. It absorbed the Amravati tradition. As we saw, Mathura became later on Nalanda through Sarnath. In South India, Amravati school of sculpture or style was gradually absorbed into temple structures of Pallavas. Next, there are 3 or 4 important types of structures and other things in Mahabalipuram. So if you have to write an answer on Mahabalipuram, you need to know for sure at least one basic thing, that there are these 4 types at least. One is mandapas. So this is mandapa. What is it? You have a stone hill, rock hill. In rock hill, you excavate. It is like this. In the front yard or porch, it is ardha mandapa. Sometimes you can go in and you can have antarvala mandapa. Sometimes you don't have that also. So it is ardha mandapa only with pillars. So Pallavas start the tradition of pillars in South India, जो बहुत सुंदर होते हैं आगे आगे. By the time you reach Chola and even after Chola, pillars are very specific. You can just look at pillar and tell the dynasty. ठीक है. Then you have sculptures on the inside which are just open air reliefs on walls. And we have various such mandapas. No, this part is being dug out of the hill when there is no temple, which is structural. This is the first phase where you evolve this volumetric aspect of temple, and later on you graduate into building structural temples out of stone. It is excavation. You decide the form, and then afterwards you want more mobility, so you start building temples out of stones, but you follow the same structure. Mandap hoga, mahamandap hoga, ardha mandap hoga. Here you have rathas. So there are pancharathas. बाद वाले भी रथा वहां पे है, समुद्र के अंदर आते हैं, कभी बाहर चले जाते हैं. In tsunami we saw some structures also 20 years ago. So there are 5 rathas. और others, मतलब बाकी random रथा यहाँ अभी 5 important rathas. Draupadi, Arjun, Bhim, Dharmaraj, Nakul, Sahadev, and then animals. So all these 5 rathas are built in 5 schools, 5 different styles of architecture. It's a huge experimentation going on. Some of the styles did not continue in future. Some of them became very important gradually in Chola era. So it is the phase of experimentation. Then you have rock bas reliefs. Bas relief, rock reliefs, open air. जैसे कि हमने देखा है, जो इंसर्ट में पूरा पन्ना दिया हुआ है. And UPSC asked on that as well. That is descent of Ganga or Arjuna's penance, Kirata Arjuniya. And then we have one famous rock temple on the shore. And this is the. Now one can even take a lot of time and explain all the parts and satire and relief and stories and fun also, but that is not necessary for us. So let us move on. But this gap in between is supposed to be descent of Ganga. Then come to living Chola temple. The great living Chola temples were built by the kings of Chola Empire, which stretched over all the South India and neighboring islands. So, हो क्या रहा है? If you see very closely, we have Badami, Aihole, Pattadkal in Deccan. After that, here you have south में. So I will write Deccan over here. I will write south over here and north over here. In south you have Pallavas. It's a little late. From that you go to Chola. Then you go to, with some gap, you go to Hampi, that is Vijayanagara. And after that you go to Nayaka in the 16th, 17th century. यहाँ पे you have Badami, Aihole, Pattadkal. There is overlap, and then you have 3 important parts. Yadav in the 12th, 13th century, Hoysalas and Kakatiyas. So Kakatiyas is also one of the temples which is in the list that we will see. In north you have Gupta, and after Gupta you have 7-8 regions that go on for the entire duration. So this is the overall process. In that thing, we have chosen some of them to be representative of the outstanding universal value, that is the attribute of UNESCO, World Heritage Site. So we have Pallava, we have Chola, we have Kakatiya, we have Hampi, we have Pattadkal, we have Konark, and we have Khajuraho. Through that you come to know the entire spectrum of temple architecture. When you study architecture specially differently, you have to study all of them in the linear fashion. The site includes 3 great 11th and 12th century temples. The Brudeshwara temple at Tanjavur, then we have Brudeshwara temple at Gangaikonda Cholapuram, and then we have Airavateshwara temple at Darasuram near Kumbakonam. The temple of Gangaikonda Choleshwaram, built by Rajendra I, was completed in 1035. Its 53-meter Viman has recessed corners and a graceful upward carving movement, contrasting with the straight and severe tower at Tanjore. There is a second at Darasuram features 24-meter Viman and a stone image of Shiva. The temples testify to the brilliant achievements of the Chola in architecture, sculpture, painting, and bronze casting. So, four things: architecture, sculpture, even painting, and bronze casting. So, in the temple, inside the Pradakshina path, on the walls, ceiling, you find painting today. Some facts. So, you have Chola Empire. Yellow is their actual region where they ruled for some time or other time. And other regions are the regions under their influence, and we know that they used to go for naval expeditions. Three of them are known. So it was called as Bay of Bengal became the backwaters of Cholas or Chola Pond, as they say. So powerful kings and monarchies, military conquest, and this, they are called living temples. Why are these temples called living temples? One reason is they are temple cities with their functioning as city ecosystems. More than that, these are the agamic tradition. Rituals as per agamic traditions have been performed uninterrupted every day and every evening for last 1000 years. They are still living temple. Temple die when the puja aspect stops. They become only monuments. These are not only monuments, they are living creatures. God wakes up every morning. ठीक है. कौसल्या सुप्रजा राम पूर्वा संध्या प्रवर्तते उत्तिष्ठ उत्तिष्ठ राजेंद्र मुखम, वो सब पता है ना. सुबह सुबह होता है तो सुप्रभातम. So living temples, and they are inseparable from the life of people around it. May it be rural life, because there are more than 1000 temples of Chola era. The temple complexes used to be part of major royal towns, but have remained as the outstanding features of today's mainly rural context. So these three temples show progressive development of Chola architecture at its peak. First and oldest of the three is the Buddhishwara at Tanjore. It was built by Rajaraja the First. The second at Gangaikonda Cholapuram is built by his son. Name of his son is Rajendra First. And then, after a gap of a century or so, you have a new king coming, Rajaraja Second. And he builds Airavadeshwara temple at Darasuram near Kumbakonam. And each temple is famous for some or different reason. I have listed some of them more here. We don't need to go into details. You can read them. And here are some aspects about facts of structure of Tanjore temple. You can read them. Loftiest pyramidal vimana of 60 meters high. So there are many stories of how it was built, why it was built, structure, technique, etc. Weight of the vimana is 43,000 tons. And then we have Antaral, Mahamandap, Gopur, first Gopur, second Gopur, stories, walls, etc. And we have gigantic sculptures as well. We have Nandi, which is very huge over here. The Linga inside is very huge. We have Dwarapalas, which are very huge. So everything is huge in the first temple. As you move to second and third temple, the size gets reduced and sculpture becomes very important. But the first is Periya Kovil. There are 2-3 more important things. One thing is that this sculpture is a Karana Mudra. Karan is not our Karan, sir, but Karan is Mudra, which is, there are almost exactly 108 dancing positions, that is Karana Mudras, are listed in Bharata's Natya Shastra. Out of those 108, you find sculptural representation in 2 important temples. Some of them are in the Tanjore temple, and all of them are in Chidambaram temple, which is not UNESCO site. But all of them are sculpted in Chidambaram temple wall. Then you have very many long inscriptions of both Tamil and Marathi and Sanskrit also in Tanjore temple. And then you have some paintings. So he is Rajaraja the First who built the temple, Buddhishwara or Choleshwara temple, and his guru Korvur Devar. So painting is also there. And these are the other 2 temples. They are not as massive, but they are as important or as significant. Go to Khajuraho group of monuments. Khajuraho is over here. It used to be important in 11th, 10th century up to 13th century, but then the focus shifted. Dekho, what was the capital of India in the ancient times? Wahan pe Magad mein shuru hua empire building activity in India. So we have over here Patliputra became capital. Then gradually capital shifted to Kannauj. कहीं पे यहाँ पे कन्नौज पे आ जाएगा. So capital was there only for some time. चलती रही capital. And then you have emerging medieval era. Capital shift to Agra and Delhi. Sometimes it shifted towards almost Lahore. Then it came back to Delhi only. So India's capital is shifting in that region, in the Ganga Yamuna belt. हाँ sir. हाँ 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 कन्नौज बहुत आज के दिन में कुछ नहीं. हर्ष सम्राट हर्ष का कैपिटल कहाँ पे था? आपने तोड़ दिया. इसलिए पढ़ना चाहिए हेरिटेज आपको. ठीक है. कन्नौज टुडे फेमस फॉर इत्र 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 अत्तर है ना. The temples of Khajuraho were built during the Chandela's dynasty. Chandela का capital Khajuraho था and reached its apogee, that is the height, between 950 and 1050. Only about 20 temples remain out of almost 50 plus. They fall into three distinct groups and belong to two different religions, Hinduism and Jainism. They strike a perfect balance between architecture and sculpture. So this architectural aspect and sculptural aspect, sometimes you see one of them dominate over another. यहाँ पे उनका balance एकदम ठीक है. The temple of Kandariya Mahadev is decorated with a profusion of sculptures that are among the greatest masterpieces of Indian art. When I say Khajuraho, immediate thing that comes into your mind is erotic sculptures, right? That is what they are famous for across today. But mind well, erotic sculptures of various orgies and sex positions and group sex and all these things are there, but they are minority. Almost 10% sculptures only are erotic sculptures of tantricism, yogini cult, all those things. 80-90% have nothing to do with eroticism at all. याद रखना हो. So this temple is the culmination of Nagar school of art or Nagar style of temple that started in Gupta era 500 years ago, reached its apogee. That's why they use the word apogee in Khajuraho. Like Mount Kailas. So there is a specific technique in South India. You see the Viman is at the center and Gopurams and entries are larger because temples are cities, live cities. So when temples start functioning, the central aspect is the god Garbhagruha, which you don't touch anymore. It is built, it is forever. Now a few decades have gone, the city has become prosperous, population increased, so you build one more boundary. Then after a few decades, new king has become more powerful. He wants to show his power. He will build more and more boundary. So we have various walls after walls, and to show the increased power, they build Gopurams are higher and higher height, more and more height. So in South India, central aspect of Garbhagruha is the shortest, and as you go outwards towards wall, the height of the temple or Gopurams keep on increasing. In North India, it is not allowed. North India has a norm that the highest point, which is Meru or Kailas Parvat, whatever, will be exactly above Garbhagruha. And from here to here, you gradually go on increasing. So it is the opposite thing. This is Jagati, that is platform. Then you have Mandap, Ardha Mandap, etc. Various type of Mandaps and all those things. You have Kakshasanas, which is a very interesting style. Kakshasan is like Adya Asan jo bagal mein rakha hai, and that becomes important all across Maru Gurjar in later time, Gujarat, Rajasthan. Plan, elevation and sculpture. Let's move on. This is the overall map. You have Hindu temples in the western part, we have Jain temples, and eastern part again Hindu temples, something like that. So we have three groups and two religions. And these are the various ways in which these temples can be classified. Based on style, based on size, based on stone, type of stone used, based on location, based on deity, based on Prakshanapat, Sandhar, Nirandhar, Sarvatobhadra, which type of temple. So you can categorize temples in various ways. Let us move on. Sun Temple at Konark. This is an example of the Kalingan school of architecture, which is a sub-school of Nagar. On the shores of the Bay of Bengal, bathed in the rays of the rising sun, the temple of Konark is a monumental representation of the sun god Surya's chariot. Now, important thing, Surya Bhagwan ki puja or Surya cult was very important at one point of time in India. Three temples, UPSC asked a question on Surya temples as well 3 years ago, I guess, or 2 years ago, I don't recall exactly. But three important Surya temples are there in India in three corners. In Kashmir, we have Mattan, that is Martanda temple. On the east side, you have Konark, On the west side in Gujarat, we have Modhera ka Surya Mandir. ठीक है, and you need to study and be able to write answer on all of them. Kashmiri School of Art or Pahadi or Hill School of Art Architecture, Konark, and then Gujarati Muruguja style. All these three regions constitute a potential question in themselves for 3 10 markers. Its 24 wheels are decorated with symbolic designs and it is led by a team of 6 horses. So Konark is a Ratha, chariot temple. सूर्य का रथ है, wheels है, घोड़े भी सामने, सब पत्थर में तराशा हुआ है. Built in the 13th century, it is one of the India's most famous Brahmin sanctuaries. So they use the Brahmin, but maybe they could be meaning Puranic, etc. But anyway, some fact. This is one of the wheels, and these wheels are very decorated and ornate, and there is symbolism in all these murtis. Here also you can see Maithunam murtis, like erotic sculptures, and then there is story about जब सूरज जाता है छाव कहाँ आती है बेस्ड ऑन द शैडो लोकेशन यू कैन टेल द टाइम एटसेट्रा वो तो है ही विद द हाफ अ सेकंड के साथ लीस्ट काउंट इज हाफ अ सेकंड और समथिंग द 13th century ईस्टर्न गंगा डायनेस्टी बिल्ड दिस टेंपल अंडर द रेन ऑफ नरसिंह देव फर्स्ट एंड फ्रॉम हियर ऑनवर्ड्स यू सी जगन्नाथ टेंपल लिंगराजा टेंपल एंड कोणार्क टेंपल सूर्य मंदिर these 3 are important temples which give this land ideal of kingship. So the sun is personified as a divine being with a history, ancestry, family, wives, progeny. So king connects with the sun as a king. And then these are directly materially linked to Brahmanism as well as tantric belief systems. In the eastern India, Bihar, Bengal, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Shakti cult is important, Shakta Parampara. So we have tantric cults also there, integrated with the main temples. So Konark temple is also called as Black Pagoda because at one point of time, ships that used to come and sail nearby used to use it as a land identifier, marker था वो समुद्र में कहाँ पहुंचे अच्छा कोणार्क तक पहुंच गए क्योंकि हाइट उसकी उतनी है तो Black Pagoda. Outstanding in its conception, scale and proportion. Now when I say it is a Kalingan architecture, which is a sub school of Nagar, it has its specificities. So we have Jagamohan, Natamandir, etc. words are there, and it has a very important role in sculptures and performing arts, that is Odissi dance. Odissi dance की मूर्तियां वहां बहुत मिलती है. आप जो सवाल पूछा था अभंग, त्रिभंग, अतिभंग, चौक etc. So त्रिभंगा position क्या है? Find it here. Chalk, you find it here. If you know Odissi dance. Sublime narrative strength of its sophisticated, refined sculptural embellishment. So basically these wheels, these horses and various other animals. So you have a giraffe which is not, India is not its natural habitat. Giraffe को देखे इंडिया में आप नहीं देखा, but यहाँ पे है. Why? Because trading relationship with Africa. African merchants brought giraffe to India. Sculpture बना दिया उसका. We have lion, horse, elephant, everything. Very masterfully done. Anyway, move to the latest temple, that is Kakatiya Ramappa Temple. It is from Vesara school. And they have a very long inscription in UNESCO. Now, I don't know why they write longer inscriptions nowadays. The older ones were shorter. Rudreshwara, popularly known as Ramappa Temple, is located in the village of Palampet, approximately 200 kilometers northeast of Hyderabad, in the state of Telangana. It is the main Shiva temple in a walled complex built during Kakatiyan period. Kakatiyan period is like after Rashtrakutas were gone. Under rulers Rudradeva and Recharla. Construction of the sandstone temple began in 1213 CE and is believed to have continued for over some 40 years. 40 साल लगे बनाने में. The building features decorated beams and pillars of carved granite and dolerite with distinctive and pyramidal viman made of lightweight porous bricks, so-called floating bricks. I think you have read all these things in newspaper nowadays. जब आया था अखबार में, recently it got inscribed into UNESCO, so various article came on that. So you know these floating bricks, etc., which reduced the weight of the roof structure. So far, what we have done over here is we have not talked of art. We have talked of geography, structural features, and technology. आर्टिस्टिक फीचर तो इसके बाद आएंगे, ठीक है। द टेम्पल स्कल्पचर्स, अब आर्ट की बात शुरू होती है, ऑफ हाई आर्टिस्टिक क्वालिटी illustrate regional dance customs. Which dance custom? UPSC asked question 20 years ago on this dance custom represented in the Ramappa Temple. हम देखेंगे. And Kakatiyan culture, located at the foothills of forested area and amidst agricultural fields, close to the shores of the Ramappa Cheruvu, a Kakatiya built water reservoir. The choice of setting for the edifice followed the ideology and practice sanctioned in dharmic texts that temples are to be constructed to form an integral part of a natural setting, including hills, forests, springs, streams, lakes, catchment areas, and agricultural lands. There is only one line on sculpture. Everything else is something else. Geography, technique, location, natural setting, dharmic texts. Point is that these things are very important. अगर आपको सवाल पूछा जाए, you should be know at least ये सब चीजें हैं यहाँ पे. So the court of Kakatiya, then they started their own agency. अपनी कंपनी शुरू की उन्होंने विजयनगर नाम से. And उनके कंप्यूटर नॉर्थ में थे बहामनी किंगडम. बहामनी विजयनगर rivalry again went on for centuries. Then Bahmani got disintegrated into 5. Those 5 came together and again विजयनगर चलता रहा. Ultimately विजयनगर got destroyed. तो ये वही पुरानी कहानी. So the austere grandiose site of Hampi was the last capital of the last great Hindu kingdom of Vijayanagara. The Vijayanagara king himself used to call himself Hindu Raya Suratrana. What is Suratrana? Suratrana word does not come from any Sanskrit word, but it is nothing but Sanskritization of the word Sultan. So Sultanate तब तक बन चुकी थी. And there are many surviving remains of all kinds, secular as well as religious. I have just mentioned a few construction techniques mentioned by UNESCO. We don't need to go into details, but just understand that various techniques, various raw material was used for various purposes. So it's a diversity of both techniques and material. It's the famous Lotus Temple. Lotus Mahal, not temple, Lotus Mahal. You see, it has modified Islamic form of arch, but with the Dravidian Viman type structure, harmonious mixing. We have huge sculptures, Ugra Narasimha. You have stables of elephant and horses, and you have roofs of various Islamic dome style. So what we come to know is that secular architecture, mahal, military defenses, etc., are highly influenced by Indo-Islamic style. But when it comes to religious architecture, temples and shrines, it is purely Hindu or Dravidian style. But both of them are in the same city, built by the same king. So Dravidian architecture flourished under Vijayanagara, where Kalyana Mandapa, Utsava Mandapa, Vasantotsava Mandapa. So various types of mandapas are added to the complex of temple, either attached to it or little separated. Kalyana Mandapa is the mandap where the marriage will take place of god and goddesses. So we have Amman shrine coming up. Amma आएगी, भगवान आएंगे, शादी बनाएंगे, वापस जाएंगे, ठीक है. We have Raya Gopurams, longer and longer Gopurams. Pushkarani is water tank. So water tank is integral part of South Indian temple complexes. Animal pillars with the animal structures on it, and chariot streets flanked by pillared mandapas. So a lot of things are there. Look at this. This is the map given in NCERT. You have royal center, you have sacred center, and you have other urban class. It's the entire landscape of Vijayanagara, and Tungabhadra is going there. Tunga Tiradi. And important religious structures के list है, and important secular structures के list है. It's very easy. You don't need to know all of, but some of the Vitthal temple is very important. Virupaksha temple, they have already asked a question on it in UPSC. Hazarama temple is important. You need to know Mahadome Dibba. These things are enough. And Lotus Mahal, Ugra Narasimha, sculpture. These things you need to know where they are located. They are like iconic things. So Lotus Mahal, Astabal, we have already seen that. Mahanavami Dibba, royal nature of kingship, it is very important. Not only for performing Mahanavami, but what kind of kingship was there in Vijayanagara. So Mahanavami Dibba and its sculpture, all of them, Mahabharata stories, etc. You have market, which is gone now. You have various pushkaranis, the water bodies in temples and around temples in Hampi. And this is the musical pillar in Vitthal temple. These pillars, like you strike them, you get a different frequency because of width and length. So all these sounds can come out of it. At one point of time, it used to be played in the praise of God and music perform होता था. अब टूरिस्ट जाने लगे हैं. Yesterday we talk of tourism dilemma. लोग बजा बजा तोड़ रहे हैं उसको. तब उसको हमने जेल में डाल दिया सबको. This is the famous chariot which is on Indian note as well now. This is Raya Gopuram. So to make the Gopuram not bulky and also cheaper, both of them, the lower part is in stone and upper part is in brick. So brick has not survived much. The stone has survived. And this is the famous Virupaksha temple. We have seen Virupaksha temple in Pattadakal. This is the another Virupaksha temple in Hampi. The entire complex. Now you see, we have one thing over here, one thing over here. What is this? The temple, right? Gopur. It is not Viman. Viman कहीं छोटा होगा यहाँ आसपास. I have made a list of all the foreign travelers and just copied some things from online so that you can have all of them at one place. Nicola D. Conti, Abdul Razak, then you have Duarte Barbosa, Domingo Paez, Nunes, and ultimately you come to Colin Mackenzie in colonial times. So all of them in the sequence of their appearance in India and their comments on Hampi and their contribution. I have listed in the era of which king they came, what they commented upon. This is a very important factual information. You should remember these things. That is the temple. Now come to medieval. Do you have any question? Oh, there are some comments there. There is watch time limit. That's why watching live. Not understanding what you are teaching. Sir, please look at the comments. We are not able to follow. We can't do anything. The class is not interactive. Are yaar, I will teach some part, then come back to questions. You can ask your questions now. No problem. हाँ लोकेश पूछो यार, टाइप करो. No problem. Just type any question you have. We missed from Ramappa Temple. Why? What happened? Oh, video was breaking. बुला दो उसको किसी को. It is working right now? No audio video for most part. Now okay. अच्छा ये अभी काम कर रहा है. रामप्पा. चलो एक काम करता हूँ. अरे यार बीच में वीडियो ऑडियो चला गया. बता रहे थे मैं रोज आता बीच में ना. वो बच्चे कमेंट कर रहे हैं अब यहाँ पे. अच्छा अच्छा ठीक ठीक ओके 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 ठीक. हाँ सो आप मतलब आई विल कंटिन्यू फ्रॉम हियर ओनली. आई विल नॉट गो बैक. यू कैन वॉच द रिकॉर्डेड पार्ट फॉर रामप्पा ऑल्सो. देयर वाज सम कनेक्शन इशू ओवर हियर. वेरी सॉरी फॉर दैट. So far, do you have any question apart from Ramappa wala issue or from उसके पहले कोई सवाल है तो वो पूछ लो. We can try to answer those questions. लोकेश पूछो. हैंड रेस किया है. Okay, let us move on. Okay, ठीक ठीक. Medieval heritage, monuments and mausoleums. Mausoleum is nothing but a tomb. Now we are entering a different phase. We'll see some structures. Rani-ki-Vav in Patan in Gujarat. Then we have 3 structures related to Islam. That is Qutb Minar, Humayun's tomb and Taj Mahal, of which 2 are tombs. Almost Qutb Minar is also a set of tombs are there, but apart from tomb there is mosque and minar also. So it's the entire complex. And then Jantar Mantar in Jaipur, which is the latest of all these things. Let us start one by one. Rani-ki-Vav on the banks of Saraswati river was initially built as a memorial to the king in the 11th century AD. So what is Vav? Vav means a Bauli, that is a well in the arid area, which is large well. And Rani-ki-Vav is the Vav built by Rani. Who is the Rani? Patan ki Rani Udaymati, who was the wife of Bhima the first of the Solanki dynasty. Typical facts. She is the same one जिसके ज़माने में हमने मोढेरा का सूर्य मंदिर बनाया है. ठीक है. So now the point is, these Vav and Baoli structures are there in the arid region. From Delhi, Rajasthan, Gujarat, and also Telangana, you find many such structures. And these structures are so important that they became the places जहाँ पे the human creativity comes out. There is no difference in Vav and Baoli. These are in different, same thing, different regions, different names. In Gujarat, they are primarily called as Vav. If you go to Rajasthan style, they become Baudis. They are the same thing, no difference. Some of them are highly ornate and sculpted, some of them are normal with just flight of stairs to go down. Step wells are a distinctive form of subterranean water resources and storage systems on the Indian subcontinent and have been constructed since the 3rd millennium BC, that is the Harappan time. We have seen the step wells in Dholavira as well. They evolved over time from what was basically a pit in sandy soil towards elaborate multi-story works of art and architecture. Rani-ki-Vav was built at the height of craftsman ability in stepwell construction, and the Maru Gurjar or Maru Gurjar, Maru is Marusthali, Rajasthan, and Gurjar is Gujarat. So Rajasthan Gujarat architectural style is called as Maru Gurjar style. Maru Gurjar's architectural style reflecting mastery of this complex technique and great beauty of detail and proportions. Yeah, but there are two things which are very important. Firstly, when they say mastery of this technique, what is the technique? It is not as easy as building or digging a well. You have to dig a well, find a water source, then you have to build the wall so that it doesn't collapse. Then you have to give the support to the wall that wall doesn't collapse. Then you have to create a longer way of going down. So even structurally, techniques have to be very evolved to be able to dig so 7, 8, 10 floors below and then have it stabilized. It is not easy. Two things are very interesting. Firstly, you go in the hill, a stone hill, and carve from top to bottom. You get Kailasnath temple. Now you start carving and not carving, the digging and sculpting from your bottom to even subterranean. You get Rani-ki-Vav. So Rani-ki-Vav is nothing but an inverted temple inside the surface of the earth. ठीक है. Inverted temple, highlighting the sanctity of water. It is divided into 7 levels of stairs with sculptural panels of high artistic quality, more than 500 principal sculptures and over 1,000 minor ones. So second important thing that I was talking about is the sculptural art of Maru Gurjar style. Here you see, starting from the ancient till modern, they use a lot of wood. Shisham ho, teak ho, sag ho, and they go for very fine carving on wood. And that style, aesthetic taste and sculptural necessities also get transformed into the stone material. Even if it is not wood, they do it there as well. So even in stone, you find very minutely sculpted structures and sculptures across Maru Gurjar style. If you go to, for example, the marble temples in Ranakpur or Mount Abu, Dilwada temples. So all are very finely sculpted. If you go to here as well, you will see very many sculptures with rounded full shapes. Minor ones combine religious, mythological and secular imagery, often referencing literary works. So for example, Kalidas ka literature hoga. So you find the stories of Puranas and Sanskrit works in the sculptures of these places. Now the thing of it is, as you go down, नीचे पानी की ठंडक है, coolness because of water, there is no sun coming directly, shadow bhi hai. So even in the heated atmosphere in the peak of summer, you can go there and enjoy and cool. So who will go there down so many flights and take the water? Generally at that time it was women's task. So it was a place for women to come out of house and congregate and enjoy and sit and have gupshup. So it has all the significances. ठीक है. The fourth level is the deepest and leads into a rectangular tank of 9.5 by 9.4 meter at a depth of 23 meters. The well is located at the westernmost end of the property and consists of shaft 10 meter in diameter and 30 meter deep. So they are going further and further down. Look at some important aspects. Firstly, where are Solankis and what is happening around them at that time? You have Chalukyas and then you have other Kakatiya, etc. So it is the previous wala part. So you have Solankis here. Parmaras here. Parmar is Bhoj Parmar, Bhojpur, Yaha wala. And Solankis and Parmars were enemies. So this Bhima first had a huge role in defeating Parmar as well. Anyway, so Chalukyan Solanki of Gujarat, unka founder tha Mool Raj. And we have various references which are important for our prelims. Firstly, it was during the reign of Bhima the First, the Ghaznavid ruler of Mahmud of Ghazni pillaged Somnath Temple. तो भीमा फर्स्ट भाग गया था, लौट के आया, उसने दोबारा कुछ किया था. So there are contemporary things that are happening. One thing. Secondly, Rani-ki-Vav was commissioned by his wife, the queen Udaymati. Fact. Thirdly, there is a book called Prabandha Chintamani. It is by a Jain monk called Meru Tunga, written little afterwards. And he talks about this thing, that Udaymati built this huge tank and all those. And it is the same king Bhima first is also known for Somnath, Moderasam temple and Dilwara temple by his ministers. So it was the height of sculptural activity and structural activity in Gujarat. जो आज के उसके जो jewels है वो सारे उस जमाने बन रहे हैं. Then this was lost and found in the colonial times. Typical story of all heritages in India. Architectural structure. So Rani-ki-Vav is an exceptional example of distinctive form of subterranean water architecture located on the banks of Saraswati river. Saraswati river is not the one in Vedas. It is also not the one in Triveni Sangam wala. And it is also not the one Ghaggar Hakra wala. It's a different Saraswati river. Okay. Facts. So we have some religious facts and some sculpturally important points. Designed as an inverted temple highlighting the sanctity of water, we have seen that in the inscription itself. Temple-like structure celebrating the sanctity of water as a venerated natural element in depiction of highest quality Brahmanic ideals based on this sculpture. Look at the sculptures. This is a different photo and this is a different photo by the way. I just zoomed in one place. So we have so many sculptures and murtis. And of various Puranic, Brahmanic and Sanskrit literature. Come to Qutb Minar. Built, it is almost contemporary. Built in the early 13th century, a few kilometers south of Delhi, the red sandstone tower of Qutb Minar is 72.5 meter high, tapering from 2.75 meter in diameter to its peak. All facts which are not important to us. Point for us to know over here is that it was built in red sandstone. Whenever a ruler of Delhi started controlling Rajasthan, Gujarat also, Delhi ruler always want to control Gujarat. आजकल थोड़ा उल्टा चल रहा है, लेकिन Delhi ruler always wants to control Gujarat because at that time Gujarat was the major trading thing. Global trade वहाँ से होता था, पैसे बहुत मिलते, revenue मिलता था. So Delhi ruler once he establishes himself there, over the next generation they will try to invade Gujarat. हमेशा हुआ है ये. So whenever they go out of Delhi and reach that part, they start having control over routes from Rajasthan also. And there they get control of marble, white marble. So you can tell based on these material used for construction by Delhi Sultans, whether they were controlling routes to Gujarat or not. If they are using red sandstone, it means by and large at that time they had not much control over Rajasthan. And if they have used white marble, it means they had friendly relationship with Rajasthan or they used to rule parts of Rajasthan. ताकि वो लेके आए material. White marble was always preferred, but it was not easy. So it is the early phase of Sultanate. It is yet to get control over there. So they are using red sandstone and not white marble. The surrounding archaeological area contains funerary buildings, notably the magnificent Alai Darwaza Gate, the masterpiece of Indo-Muslim art, and two mosques, including Quwwatul Islam Mosque. Now we will see all these things one by one. The oldest in northern India, built of materials reused from some 20 Brahman temples. Now there is a dispute. Actually, I have read it at many places that these are Jain temples. So UNESCO is saying Brahman temples, but my understanding is that these were Jain temples. Anyway, first fact, as I talked about thing today, this is a minaret of Jam in Ghur province in Afghanistan. Ghurid people used to build many such minars. This minar is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It was built by Ghurids before they came to India. तो वही परंपरा लाके उन्होंने कंटिन्यू की, कुतुब मीनार बनाया. जहां जहां जाएंगे विक्ट्री होगी, आफ्टर विक्ट्री दे विल बिल्ड वन मीनार. So it is also a very important symbol in Afghanistan today. When Afghanistan diplomat comes to India, generally he will give a gift of चादर. चादर के ऊपर ये एम्ब्रॉयडरी किया होगा, ये मीनार होगा. तो ये टिपिकल चलता रहता है, कल्चरल एक्सचेंज. So Qutb Minar, not this one, but the Qutb Minar displays a marked variation in architectural styles from Aibak to Tughlaq. So now we know that दिल्ली सल्तनत में अलग अलग डायनेस्टीज हुए हैं, मामलुक के लेके तुगलक के लेके सैयद एंड लोदी तक. So for the first almost a century, the Qutb complex was being built, and the styles kept on evolving, all of which you can find in the same complex. So it was initiated, Qutb Minar was initiated by Qutbuddin Aibak, but he could build only first story. Then it was completed by Iltutmish, the next 3 floors. Afterwards, it was again little bit built by Alauddin Khilji, the complex surrounding it. He had the grandiosest, if that word can exist, of plans of this complex. लेकिन कभी पूरा ही नहीं हो पाया वो. And then it was renovated by Firoz Shah Tughlaq later on. उसने और 2 ऊपर माले चढ़ा दिए. So almost from 1192 till 1370s it is going on. ठीक है, 200 साल तक चलता. This is a plan of Qutb complex. The red part, this is the Qutb Minar, and this is Quwwatul Islam Mosque. Quwwatul Islam Mosque is the one we saw built from the reused material from Jain temples. Debate चलता रहता है, तोड़े थे, गिरे हुए थे, whatever. It is not our concern right now in UPSC. So Quwwatul Islam was the earliest existing mosque in India. The first mosque in India was not this one, but in South India we know that, Kerala, on the banks of Bharatpura river. But this is the earliest existing mosque in India. That mosque is gone because वो coastal structure, wood, etc. खराब हो जाता है. It is typically Ghurid architecture and is similar to अढ़ाई दिन का झोपड़ा in Ajmer, built almost at the same time. अच्छा, Dilwada in Rajasthan is in the, yes, Dilwada, there is complete connection with Dilwada. Okay, connection with what? Are you asking in the context of Rani-ki-Vav or marble over here? Lokesh? See, these are near contemporary things with a similar kind of sculptural sensitivities. That is the only connection. Secondly, Dilwada temples were built by Jain ministers who used to serve these kings. उनके दरबार से थे, तो वही कल्चरल पैट्रोनेज भी था. These two are important things. ठीक है. Anyway, so we have Qutb Minar, Quwwatul Islam Mosque, Tomb of Iltutmish, Alai Darwaza Gate, Alai Minar, Iron Pillar. So this is the Qutb Minar over here. We have Quwwatul Islam Mosque. Then we have Tomb of Iltutmish at the back end over here. Then we have Alai Darwaza Gate and Alai Minar. So these blue things were added by Iltutmish, and the black things were added later on, largely by Alauddin Khilji. So Alauddin Khilji wanted to expand the complex to the much grand level. He could not do so, but he tried 2 things. Firstly, he tried to build even larger minar called Alai Minar, which was never completed. But had it been completed, it would have been much taller than Qutb Minar. And secondly, he built this Alai Darwaza, which is the first completely truly Islamic monument in India. ठीक है, तो it's a very beautiful as well. Red sandstone, some marble work and calligraphy and all those things. And there is iron pillar over here. This iron pillar is purportedly also called as Mehroli pillar, जो कभी जंग नहीं खाता है. That came from Gupta era. Chandra, nobody knows which Chandra king, Chandragupta or which Gupta. And there is contrasting perspectives we talked about yesterday already. What does it represent? Then we have Humayun's tomb in Delhi. This tomb, see, this is the nice inscription, chota sa. This tomb, built in 1570, is of particular cultural significance as it was the first garden tomb in the Indian subcontinent. See, gardens were started being built by Lodhis, but garden tomb as an integrated concept came in the time of Mughals. Not garden, I'm saying garden, royal gardens for tombs, all those things. Britishers brought the lawn concept. It inspired several major architectural innovations, culminating in the construction of Taj Mahal. So, the journey from pre-Humayun tomb to Humayun tomb and from Humayun tomb to Taj Mahal is a beautiful journey. We can't see all of that over here, but what is this called as? This foundation? Had it been a Nagar temple, what would we call it? Jagati, the platform. Okay. So, we have marble and also we have red sandstone, mix of both of them. It is a typical structure built in the era of Akbar. Humayun did not build it. Humayun did not get time to build it. So, commissioned by Humayun's wife and chief consort Empress Bega Begum, that is Haji Begum. Location is important for UNESCO also because it is in the vicinity of Purana Kila and very close to Nizamuddin Dargah. So, Sufi cultural influence is also there, and that was purposeful choice of location. Humayun's tomb is known as a graveyard of Mughal family because apart from the tombstone of Humayun, there are almost 150 Mughal family members over generations buried over there. For example, Bega Begum, Hamida Begum, Dara Shuko का बीच में डिबेट होता है which of the tombs is Dara Shuko tomb. हुआ क्या है? This is a Persian architecture, and in the Persian architecture of Hasht Behisht, you have various rooms over here and at the bottom, and all these rooms you have various tombstones, and many of them are not named, so we don't know to whom they belonged. The debate कि भाई Dara Shuko का है, everybody knew that some of these, one of these is Dara Shuko, but nobody knew which one. वो debate recently resolved हुआ है. It is what some people are saying. But anyway, graveyards of Mughals, graves of all these people, including other people, numerous other subsequent Mughals, including Emperor Jahandar Shah, those who come after Aurangzeb, Farooq Siyar, Rafiud-Dawla, etc., Alamgir II, many of them are buried there. Ultimately, the Mughal Empire ended in this place. जब 1857 की बगावत हुई थी तो जफर भाग के यहीं पे आके छुपा था. जब अंग्रेजों ने उसके पकड़ा, यहीं तो पकड़ा. And then he was presented with the head of two of his sons. आपका डायनेस्टी खत्म, ये उनके आप नजराना ले लो, आपके बेटों के सर है यहाँ पे, उसको परोस दिया. Mughal dynasty ended in this monument. So historically, it is very important. So facts of the architecture. This is the Charbagh structure, and this is the Persian monument from which it is influenced. The style of Persian monuments, designed by Persians, Malik Mirza Ghiyas and his son Sayyid Muhammad. So Persian architects were brought to India to build it. First of the grand Mughal tombs reaching the zenith 80 years later in Taj Mahal. Short 80 years span from Humayun tomb to Taj Mahal, evolution हुआ है tomb structure का Mughal era में. It is a clear departure from the fairly decent monuments that were built by Mughals earlier. So Babur, Humayun, and the first few years of Akbar, they did not build grand monuments. From here, the Mughal tradition starts of building grand monuments. Modeled on Gure Amir, the tomb of his ancestor Timur in Samarkand. Samarkand में जो आमिर तिमूर जो है, Tamerlane, उसके ऊपर मॉडल किया गया है. I had a friend Taimur Malaiki, Persian था वो. So he said at one point of time he had come to India, he had seen Taj Mahal. So oh ये तो Persian है. So anyway, so it is highly Persianized structure. Precedent for future Mughal architecture also. It was the first garden tomb as we saw. It is Charbagh. And what is Charbagh? Charbagh is a concept, imagery, Islamic paradise as mentioned in Quran Sharif. उसको imitate करने की कोशिश होती है. At the other level, it is also something which is reminiscent to Mughals, which reminds them of their Central Asian homeland as well. ठीक है. Sir, please give us idea what can be asked for prelims and what can be asked for mains. Pranmya Pandey. See, that's what I've been doing since the beginning. I'm asking, giving you idea of what kind of questions can be asked. But if you want any specific questions, though, I have given mains ke sare questions in the beginning. And thirdly, I will also give you a 100 MCQ test, so you will get a complete idea and revision of all these monuments as well. So don't worry. Then you have Indo-Islamic. some Persian elements and some Indian elements. So you see the fusion of Indo-Islamic happening. Chhatris, for example, are clearly Rajasthani style. They are taken into Humayun tomb. And symbolic mihrab design, the royal ideology has to come with it. Mihrab जो होता है वहाँ किबला होता है, and किबला points towards the direction of Makkah, towards जो टेन नमाज पढ़ना होता है. तो वहाँ पे generally if you see there is a calligraphy which inscribes one specific श्लोक या फिर उसको बोलते हैं सूरा 24 अन-नूर ऑफ कुरान, जहाँ पे भगवान की बात की गई है, वो लाइट आता है वगैरह. It is one monument where there is no surah inscribed. What it is trying to tell that Mughal Badshah is of the equal level and he is more important than other Muslim kings in the world. It doesn't need that surah. So, kingship of Mughals. Taj Mahal. I do not think you need to learn Taj Mahal. सबको पता है ताज महल के बारे में. I'll read it once for you. An immense mausoleum of white marble built in Agra between 1631 and 48 by order of the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan in memory of his favorite wife. The Taj Mahal is the jewel of Muslim art in India and one of the universally admired masterpieces of the world's heritage. The factual details, everybody knows a lot of them, so I will skip Taj Mahal for a moment. This is an important part. These are the 6 tombs of the 6 great Mughal emperors. Now identify, I'll just point out at a tomb, tell me which Mughal emperor is buried where. Name of the emperor and name of the place, both things. Which Mughal emperor is buried here? Place? Agra. Delhi. अब रुको. Vedanti ma'am. Akbar is buried here in Secondara in UP. ठीक है. This one. Baghe Babar, Kabul, Babar. This one. Jahangir in Lahore. So we don't study it. He is the only place जहाँ पे tomb नहीं है कोई. There is no tomb. He ordered no tomb to be built. ठीक है. And then we have Aurangzeb in Khuldabad, Aurangabad. ठीक है. So these are the list Mughal emperors. Red one because he was not Mughal, he was interlude. Sher Shah Suri, contribution to architecture, and the place where the tomb is built. ठीक है. Jantar Mantar. The Jantar Mantar in Jaipur is an astronomical observation site built in the early 18th century. It includes a set of some 20 main fixed instruments. They are monumental examples in masonry of known instruments, but which in many cases have specific characteristic of their own. So Jantar Mantar is observatory for the purpose of astronomical observation, and it does not use telescope. So it is pre-telescopic kind of thing. So you have instruments to indirectly observe and calculate back astronomical positions. That is the entire purpose. Designed for the observation of astronomical positions with the naked eye, they embody several architectural and instrumental innovations. This is the most significant, most comprehensive, and the best preserved of India's historic observatories. It is an expression of the astronomical skills and cosmological concepts of the court of a scholarly prince at the end of the Mughal period. So we'll see the details, but not all of them, most of them. Firstly, Jantar Mantars were built by whom? What is Jantar in Mantar? What is Jantar in Jantar Mantar? Jantar क्या होता है? Jantar is yantra, instrument. Yantra and mantra, Jantar Mantar. ठीक है. So you have Jantar Mantar built at 5 important places by Jai Singh, Savai Jai Singh. ठीक है. Ujjain, Jaipur, Delhi, Mathura, and Varanasi. All 5 were built by him because he was posted in Banaras for many years. उसका घर था वहाँ पे, महल था. He built one there as well. Ujjain has been the astronomical node of India for centuries. Ujjain has the history of having various astronomical observatories over centuries. That is a 0 point, Greenwich of India passes through Ujjain for centuries in traditional measurements. That is 0 point of India. भट्टाचार्य कौन थे? भट्टाचार्य नहीं, क्या नाम था उनका? आर्यभट्ट used to live in Ujjain. ठीक है. So, but Jaipur one is the one which is most famous and which is UNESCO World Heritage Site. Other Jantar Mantars are not. ठीक है. So there is something called as Jiz astronomy. These are tables. पंचांग होते हैं ना, tables होते हैं in Islamic astronomy. For that they need accurate measurements, and there is always a debate going on. To resolve those debate, the 5 different locations can be used to get measurements and then reconcile the readings to get at the accurate numbers for the panchang. ठीक है. Instruments were many instruments which are positional instruments and not telescopic. And despite being huge and massive, they used to give very accurate and very minute least count of seconds, milliseconds, and all those things. So now come to the last part. We have Champaner-Pavagadh, Ahmedabad, Fatehpur Sikri, Jaipur. So we have these 4 cities, and Agra Fort, Red Fort complex in Delhi, and Hill Forts of Rajasthan. So 3 forts or fort complexes. That will be the end of major things. Any questions so far? कोई क्वेश्चन है? चलो, let us move on. Champaner-Pavagadh, it is in which state? गुजरात. पढ़ के बताएंगे. So a concentration of largely unexcavated archaeological, historic, and living cultural heritage properties. So Champaner was at one point of time capital of Gujarat, and Pavagadh was also one of the capitals of Gujarat at the same but little bit staggered time. They are very close to each other. They were in the medieval times. Why it is important? Because pre-Mughal era cities are not preserved very well in India. Pre-Mughal yet Islamic structures कैसे रहे होंगे? That you get to know in these places. Champaner and Pavagadh is Hindu capital. Champaner is Muslim capital, and both are very close by. तो आपने कॉम्प्लेक्स बना दिया in 14th-15th century. ठीक है. So cradled in an impressive landscape which includes prehistoric Chalcolithic sites. Lot of them are unexcavated. A hill fortress of an early Hindu capital and the remains of 16th century capital of the state of Gujarat. The site includes also, among others, fortifications, palaces, religious buildings, residential precincts, agricultural structures, and water installations from 8th to 14th century. So, a lot of things are there. The Kalika Mata temple at the top of Pavagadh is important. The site is the only complete and unchanged Islamic pre-Mughal city in India. ठीक है. देखेंगे. Facts. Firstly, in the Panchmal district in Gujarat, एक बात तो simple fact. Then concentration of various types of sites in the context of topology and landscape, typical for all the sites that we have seen so far. Thirdly, prehistoric sites, hill fortress, Hindu capital, and remains of Islamic capital before Mughal. 3 important parts. And then contains other remnants and other structures. So it's a basic simple fact sheet. So it was built at the time of Gujarat Sultanate. After the demise of Delhi Sultanate and before the emergence of Mughals, we have 1 century of here and there, in which various regional polities come into being, of which one is Gujarat Sultanate. So Gujarat Sultanate built Champaner as their capital after defeating the earlier capital of Gujarat, that was Pavagadh, which was built by Khichi Chauhan Rajputs in 13th century. So Pavagadh is on the hill. They were defeated. They were Rajputs by sultans, and they had their own capital nearby, that is Champaner. ठीक है? The simple thing. So who defeated them? It was Sultan Mahmud Begada. There is a famous story of Begada. मूछे बांधता था सर पे, जहर पीता था, type typical stories होती है. Even NCERT, old NCERT gives that story. It's a funny bit. Funny bit. So we'll see about them. Oh. there is one slide here. See, this is Gujarat Sultanate. After Firoz Shah Tughlaq, and when Nadir Shah came to India, looted India, when Nadir Shah नहीं, कौन आया था वहाँ पे उस समय? Timurlang. After Timurlang went back, Delhi was sacked and vandalized. Various regional powers came into being, of which one was Gujarat Sultanate, and they had all these sultans. And ultimately, when Mughals came, they defeated all these regional powers and created one empire again. So, in between Sultanate and Mughals, we have various regional powers. In that, you see two capitals were built in Gujarat. One capital is Ahmedabad. It was built by Ahmad Shah I. That was the first capital of Gujarat Sultanate. And then afterwards, we have Mahmud Begada, who built Champaner as the capital. Ahmedabad has continued to remain most important city in Gujarat since then, since the Sultanate time. And Ahmedabad is therefore also a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but for different reasons. We'll see them. So that was about Champaner-Pavagadh. Yes. ठीक है. Pranmya, what makes a site UNESCO heritage site? I discussed that in detail yesterday in first half an hour or 1 hour. So please watch yesterday's lecture, and even if you face problem after that, we can discuss it. ठीक है. So that won't be a problem. And what is the purpose of declaring a site as UNESCO heritage site apart from cultural significance? That's what I discussed all these things yesterday in the first half an hour, 1 hour. Please watch yesterday's lecture first and then ask me. ठीक है. हाँ. So let us move on. Historic city of Ahmedabad. Now Ahmedabad is a city, complete city is becoming a World Heritage Site, not only because of its fort, but for its living cultural landscape. यहाँ पे you will see there are many mosques and temples. So you have religious and tombs, religious structures that are one part of it. Second part is fort. Third part is capital. And more importantly, there are some things like poles and puras. जो old city के कोठियाँ होती है ना, इस तरह गुजरात के अहमदाबाद में there are old city कोठियाँ which are poles. And they have a living, religious, secular, close neighborhood, which is one major reason because of which we call it UNESCO World Heritage Site in this context. उसको देखेंगे. So first of all, facts of urban archaeology. Once you go to Gujarat, you see very minute sculpting activity. ठीक है. So very famous Sidi Said, Jali. Jali became important in Mughal times, but we have the Sidi Said ki Jali even before that. Right? Then you have such kind of carving on stone, impact of wooden architecture only. So founded by Sultan Ahmad Shah in 1411 on the bank of Sabarmati. Royal Monuments exhibits unique fusion of multicultural character, and यहाँ पे you find timber-based things and various religious people, Zoroastrian, Parsis, Jains, Hindus, Muslims living together, even Jews for centuries. And even in Musalman, you will see, for example, when Fatimid were destroyed in Egypt, many people came to India. They came to Gujarat as well. So even in Islam, various sects you find in Gujarat. So you have community organizational spaces like old cities, havelis and poles, which are gated residential communities or lakdiyon ke mahal, and they are carved like this in Ahmedabad old city. Then you have poles, houses which are a self-sufficient units in their own climatic context. पानी का इंतजाम कैसे होगा, हवा कैसे अच्छे ठंडक पहुंचाएगी, उस तरह घर बनाए हैं सारे. And other things. So this multicultural coexistence is also there. So Gujarat capital Ahmedabad became World Heritage Site not because only it was one of the old capitals and pre-Islamic thing, pre-Mughal thing, but because of other ecosystem related issues also. Agra Fort, yes sir, आपके घर का बगल में है. ठीक है. Near the gardens of Taj Mahal stands the important 16th century Mughal monument known as Agra Fort, Red Fort in Agra. And there are various monuments built during Akbar, Shah Jahan, etc. Akbar built 3 important forts, Agra Fort, then Allahabad Fort and Lahore ka fort. Yes, he also built many other forts, but these are three very important forts, major forts. So brief timeline of Akbar. Agra ka fort, you have Sikandar Lodi shifting his capital to Agra for the first time. Agra starts becoming important in Lodi time before Mughal. Then you have, after the first battle of Panipat, Mughals captured the fort and start ruling from it. It becomes capital by default. And the fort was commissioned by Akbar later on. Capital shifted to Delhi, came to Agra again, came shifted to Delhi. वो सब चलता रहता है. So fort and the walls. The fort is actually not a fort, but it is a walled city altogether. A large part of it is still not accessible to people because of the cantonment and army wala thing. But whatever you can see, it's a very beautiful thing. There are various structures here. टिपिकल दीवानी खास, दीवानी आम, खास महल वगैरह तो हर जगह होते हैं, यहाँ भी है. बट अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट यू हैव अ वेरी ब्यूटीफुल पर्ल मॉस्क विच इज कॉल्ड मोती मस्जिद. देयर आर टू वेरी ब्यूटीफुल पर्ल मॉस्क्स इन इंडिया, वन इन आगरा फोर्ट, वन इन दिल्ली फोर्ट. दिस वन वाज बिल्ड बाय शाहजहां एंड दिल्ली वन वाज बिल्ड बाय औरंगजेब, विच इज ऑल्सो इक्वली ब्यूटीफुल. ठीक है, लाइक विरूपाक्ष टेम्पल इज इन पट्टड़कल एंड खजुराहो, important one. Similarly, important pearl mosques are in Agra and Delhi. Fatehpur Sikri, the entire brainchild of Akbar again, the city of victory. Fatehpur, that is Vijayanagar, same नाम है, ठीक है. Built during the second half of the 16th century by Akbar, it was the capital of the Mughal Empire for only 10 years. It was abandoned. Now the various theories why it was abandoned. इतना पैसा खर्चा किया, capital moved from here there to Fatehpur Sikri and then it was abandoned very quickly. Some people say पानी का problem था, but many people disbelieve that theory कि Akbar जो person who can create such a huge city can think of water beforehand. Pani was not a problem, water was not a problem, but he had to shift to Lahore to stop the invasions from Afghanistan. So that's why Fatehpur Sikri was abandoned. That is another theory, but anyway. The complex of monuments and temples all in the uniform architectural style includes one of the largest mosques in India, the Jama Masjid. This is the one. ठीक है, and this is Buland Darwaza. So this is the overall plan, and almost 50 monuments are there. All of them are not in the same status of conservation, but still they are there. And Buland Darwaza is there. Fatehpur Sikri, city of victory. यहाँ पे you will also find different domains, religious domain, secular domain, administrative part, urban part, market part. Everything is completely planned. But the interesting thing is that the roads are not intersecting in crisscross manner or 90 degree. It is not like that. There are random clusters and random places, and everything is organic. So it is not a completely planned city as well. There is an element of disorganization which is perhaps purposeful or intentional. ठीक है, architecture beautiful amalgamation of indigenous and Persian styles, fusion of various Indo-Islamic styles. Original rectangular plan with grid patterns roads ऐसे था, लेकिन ऐसे कुछ only in some part. See, यहाँ पे you'll find grid pattern. Then nearby you have other parts. In between there is nothing. ठीक है, थोड़ा organic वाला mix था उसमें. The buildings are constructed in red sandstone with little use of marble. Influenced Mughal town planning like Shahjahanabad. That is Delhi. So these are secular structures and these are religious structures. You have Diwani Am, Diwani Khas, typical Panch Mahal. Panch Mahal is a very airy structure influenced by Rajasthani style. You have Anup Talao, where it is said that Tansen used to sing his music by sitting at the center of Anup Talao. You have Khwab Gaha. Khwab Gaha means the one where one sees dream. That is bedroom of the Badshah. Sapna dikhne ki jagah. Birbal Mahar, Palace of Jodhabai, many other things are there. And Jama Masjid, largest at that time, tomb of Salim Chishti. Inside this, it is built entirely in marble, and it was because of his Ashirwad Akbar got a progeny, so became Salim, became Jahangir. And in Buland Darwaza, because of his victory over Gujarat. This is Hiran Minar rather, in Fatehpur Sikri. It is named after Akbar's favorite elephant. नहीं, almost it will get in 15 minutes खत्म हो जाएगा. ठीक है. At that time, Akbar, in even medieval times before Akbar, we have various coast minars. That is, coast minar मतलब हर कोस्ट पे एक मीनार, डिस्टेंस मेजर करने के लिए माइलस्टोन्स की तरह मीनार होते थे. शाह सड़क है, शाही सड़क, Grand Trunk Road, and in every coast there are minars to measure distances. So this measurement used to start from one place, that is this place. This was point zero in India. When British people came, they made Nagpur के यहाँ एक stone है उसको बना दिया उन्होंने zero center. In Akbar Mughal era, this was a zero center inside Fatehpur Sikri. Then Red Fort complex in Delhi. Again, we know that very well. I won't be reading these things because it is very interesting, but very well known. What we need to know is some important aspects of it. I'll read them out for you. Firstly, it represents zenith of Mughal creativity. It's an interesting task to compare Fatehpur Sikri with this thing. Agra Fort with this Red Fort Delhi. You see how the concept is evolving. Planning and design represents the culmination of Mughal architectural development, and we have various fusion. Again, fusion. If you go to ancient time, you have Hindu, Jain, Bauddha fusion. If you go to medieval time, you have Hindu and Muslim fusion. So fusion to tolerance to हमेशा चलता रहेगा. That's not a big thing. Critical impact on geo-cultural regions shaping its identity. Symbol of power since the era of Shah Jahan. ठीक है. Then represents British occupation. 1857 I already talked about it. उसके अंदर 1857. And then even in 1942 के बाद लाल किले से आई आवाज, दिल्लन सहगल शाह नवाज, INA trials happened here only. And since the first 15th of August speech, every prime minister gives speech here only. परसों हुआ है. ठीक है. So geo-cultural region taking shape in India. Identity of India का एक central point जो है Red Fort of Delhi. And it is in unique Shah Jahani style synthesis and all those things. These are the structures inside the Red Fort of Delhi. Nahr-e-Behisht, for example. Behisht is a paradise. ठीक है. Nahr is a channel of water. So flow of water and channel in paradise. तो उस तरह बना, मतलब these are all nice elements. Then Jaipur city, Rajasthan. It happened couple of years ago only. The entire city again, like Ahmedabad or Champaner-Pavagadh is not a living city. Ahmedabad is. Jaipur is also there. The walled city of Jaipur in India's northwestern state of Rajasthan was founded in 1727 by Savai Jai Singh II. Unlike other cities in the region located in hilly terrain, Jaipur was established on the plain. So Rajput cities are generally not in plains. Jaipur was one of the first क्योंकि defense करना है, fort के अंदर जाना है आपको. It was in the plains and built according to a grid plan interpreted by in the light of Vedic architecture. So old Jaipur city का जो पूरा planning है, that is based on Vedic architecture. I don't know what exactly. I try to Google it. ज़्यादा नहीं मिलता है. But the thing is that they have various names and dimensions and directions. कौन दिशा में क्या होना चाहिए based on those things. The streets feature continuous colonnade business that intersect the center, creating large public squares called chaupards. ठीक है. Markets, shops, residences, temples built along the main streets have uniform facades because it is a planned city. The city's urban planning shows an exchange of ideas from ancient Hindu and early modern Mughal as well as Western cultures. So ultimately it is all about urban planning as far as Jaipur is concerned, based on what ideas. The grid plan is a model that prevails in the West, while the organization of different city sectors like chaudis differ to traditional Hindu concepts. Designed to be a commercial capital, the city has maintained its local commercial, artisanal and cooperative traditions to this day. ठीक है? It is not difficult. This is the Hawa Mahal thing that we talked about yesterday. ठीक है? And these are like different material, different structures and very many of them. Yes sir, ध्यान दीजिए. And he is the one who built the city of Jaipur. That's why he is called as Jai Singh, right? Or vice versa. Before that वो कहाँ से थे? आमेर से. आमेर का किला बगल में ही है. So that used to be the capital. So Kachwaha rulers of kingdom of Amer. Amer is very close to Delhi. It is the first place that has to face the ruler of Delhi. So Amer, Kachwa, Rajputs were generally always hand in glove with Delhi rulers. उनके साथ दोस्ती बनाए रखते हैं. दुश्मनी नहीं चाहिए. चित्तौड़ सबसे दूर. So it can have defenses. He is known to have performed Ashwamedh sacrifice twice or more. So if you have the list of all the important kings in India who performed Ashwamedh. You find most of the names in the ancient times. In the modern times, you have one or two names only. He is the last one. इसके बाद Ashwamedh नहीं हुआ है. He had Euclid's elements of geometry translated into Sanskrit and built Jantar Mantar. The same person. See, this Jantar Mantar is based on a Ptolemaic worldview. ठीक है. उसके बाद फिर हेलियोसेंट्रिसिज्म वगैरह बाद में आता है. So even in the Europe at that time, it was known that sun is the center of the universe in that sense. यहाँ पर Ptolemy में अर्थ the center, geocentric. And this last one is hill forts of Rajasthan. So there are 6 hill forts of Rajasthan. The serial site means they have more than one sites. We talked of serial site that is being nominated, Silk Road. So it is serial site. Maratha fort architecture is also serial site which is nominated. It is on the tentative list. Situated in the Rajasthan, includes 6 majestic forts in Chittorgarh, Kumbhalgarh, Savai Madhopur, Jhalawad, Jaipur, Jaisalmer. Now you should be able to tell me which one is which. There are 6 points on the map. There are 6 places. चित्तौड़गढ़ कौन सा है बताइए इसमें से? कौन सी साइड वाला? ऊपर है क्या? लेफ्ट वाला? दिस वन? दिस इज जैसलमेर. देख लेना आप आराम से. ठीक है. So the eclectic architecture of the forts, some up to 20 kilometers in circumference, bears testimony to the power of Rajput princes or princely states that flourished in the region from 8 to 18 हजार साल का इतिहास. ठीक है. So after the Rajput as a clan or as a cluster of clans emerged in early medieval, and from that point till the end of Mughal. अभी भी चलती है. राजपूत तो अभी भी है वैसे, वो बात अलग है. बट वो इमरजेंस जो है 8th सेंचुरी में, वो कहाँ से होता है, क्यों होता है? देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ डिबेट ऑन ओरिजिन ऑफ राजपूत्स. Enclosed within defensive walls are major urban centers, palaces, trading centers, and other buildings, including temples, etc., that often predate the fortifications within the developed elaborate country culture that supported learning. So मतलब है कि temples पहले है, कभी fort बाद में है. Fort के बाहर शहर है, fort के अंदर शहर है. Learning center, religious center, it's a complete package. That's the point. And architecture as well. Some of the urban centers enclosed in the fortifications have survived, as have many of the sites, temples, and other sacred buildings. The forts use the natural defenses offered by the landscape, hills, deserts, rivers, dense forests. It is an important point. All these 6 forts are located, although they are in Rajasthan, they are located in different type of landscape. हम देखेंगे उनको. They also feature extensive water harvesting structures, largely still in use today. सीधी बात है. So, important interchange of princely Rajput मतलब परंपरा, अभिमान, शूरता, वीरता, धीरता, इन सब का manifestation you find in structural forms in these forts. That is the point. Bravery, feudalism, cultural traditions of valor documented in several texts that you can see in forts as well. Important phase in the development of an architectural typology based on established traditional Indian principles. See, Rajput school of architecture कोई है नहीं. It doesn't exist. It is nothing but eclectic mix from other regions modified suitably for their requirement in their region. ठीक है. Localized context, extensive fortifications to 20 kilometers, etc. Let us see this thing. So various functions of forts क्या क्या थे? Defensive structures to defend themselves against invaders. Center of courtly culture, वहाँ पे patronage दिया जाएगा, art, music, sculpture, etc. Learning, education and art का learning. Then you have extensive urban settlements, and that's why along with that comes mercantile centers, production, distribution. तो trade centers भी थे वो. Religious centers, before the structures, sometimes the temples predate that we just saw. Extensive water harvesting structure. So these are the points that are there in the first page, just listed in bulleted form. So these are the 6 forts: Chittorgarh, Kumbhalgarh, Ranthambore, Gagrao, Amber Palace, and Jaisalmer. And these are the specific details. UPSC might ask a question on this also, कि एक तो मैपिंग का क्वेश्चन आ सकता है. Eclectic architecture means, Pran, I talked about it. Eclectic मतलब chosen selectively with some purpose. There are many different things of which you have selected. I will pick up this one, that one, and that one. because it supports my idea, my thought. So eclectic is selectivity, select or choice and considered choice. ठीक है. Are all 6 forts made by same ruler? No, no, no. They are not by same ruler. They do not belong to same era as well. That's why these are the details. They come from different era, different parts of Rajasthan, and they have different context. It is hardly ever one ruler ruled all 6 regions at any point of time. Rajasthan is always feudal, and there are various parts. It is distributed. It is not by same ruler at all. ठीक है. So these are 6 forts. So that is the end of it. Colonial architecture, I discussed that they have not asked question in last 15 years. I still prepared slides for you. There are churches of Goa, Mountain Railway, CST in Mumbai, Mumbai Victorian, Gothic and Art Deco ensembles, and finally Le Corbusier in post-independence India, Chandigarh city. You can go through these slides yourself. All the facts are given, but I will not teach them because UPSC is not asking these questions. In the end, what I have done, I have given you the list of all the tentative sites in India, of which the green one are in natural heritage and black one are cultural heritage. ठीक है. What I would urge you to go through UNESCO inscription at least of all these cultural heritages. UPSC is yet to discover all of them in questions, and one of them might turn into UNESCO World Heritage Site any point of time. इनको जानना थोड़ा मतलब एटलीस्ट नेम, बेसिक इंस्क्रिप्शन, लोकेशन, एरा, पैट्रोनेज, इतना जानो, दैट इज गुड इनफ. डोंट गो इनटू डिटेल्स एंड डू रिसर्च. ठीक है. चलो, थैंक यू. एनी क्वेश्चन अगर है तो पूछ लो यार. कोई सवाल है लोकेश? नो सर. ओके, थैंक यू. चलो, I'll upload the test in a day or two of 100 MCQs, which will help you revise all these sites very quickly. ठीक है. Okay.